Chapter 4975. Okay, I won't stand on ceremony with you, Captain. Lin, he nodded with a smile, and was then escorted off the battleship by Okuda. Looking at the scene at Middle Island's pier, Lin, he could not help but sigh. The last time he came to Middle Island, his knowledge was not as vast as it was now. At that time, he naively thought that Middle Island was the supreme land and the center of the 5 heavenly islands. However, now it seemed that although Middle Island was the center, it was only the center in terms of geographical location. Its strength and status might not be much higher than that of North Island and West Island. Compared to the unpredictable East Continent and the South Continent with the spirit beasts, Middle Island was still far behind. To put it bluntly, the Middle Island was only treated as the headquarters by many chambers of commerce because of its excellent geographical location. It wasn't because of how powerful the people there were. Only the Eastern Continent, which was filled with experts, could truly represent the peak of the Heaven Stage Island. But then again, although Middle Island's strength was far inferior to the East Continent, it was still the headquarters of the major chambers of commerce. It was also the transportation hub that connected the 4 heavenly islands of the North, South, East, and West. In terms of prosperity, it was not inferior to the main cities of the academies in the East Continent. Walking through the commercial district of Middle Island, Lin unknowingly arrived at the market street. He was worried about Tian-chan and Sydney, so Tian Pavilion was naturally his first stop. As the owner of the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion, Lin, he felt a little guilty at the moment. It had been more than 2 years since he left last time, and he hadn't come back even once in such a long time. He was really thorough in leaving the responsibility to others. If it weren't for his own people like Tian-chan and Shueli, the entire Heavenly Elixir Pavilion might have changed hands a long time ago. As a hands-off manager, Lin, he was relaxed, but Tian-chan and Sydney suffered. Although they had the support of people like the Will of Heaven, they were women after all. It was not easy for them to establish a foothold in Middle Island. Moreover, Lin disappeared from time to time, causing the supply of elixirs to be unable to keep up. The two of them were troubled because of this. It could be said that Tian-chan and Sydney had made great contributions to Tian Pavilion. In contrast, Lin did not do much for them. If he did not feel guilty, he could only be said to be too heartless and irresponsible. Fortunately, they finally returned to Middle Island this time. Lin, he could more or less make up for it. In fact, for the two women, as long as he appeared, it was a big surprise. However, before Lin, he walked to the front, he saw from a distance that the entrance of Tian Pavilion was bustling with a large circle of people. Lin, he was suddenly stunned. After such a long time, Tian Pavilion was still so crowded? When Tian Pavilion first opened, because there were all kinds of elixirs of the best quality, the business was extremely hot, just like the scene in front of him. However, even at that time, it did not last long. After a few days, the scene was not so hot anymore. Could it be that Tian-chan and Ning Shuifei were good at managing, and after more than 2 years of hard work, they had completely established the reputation of Tian Pavilion? But it should not be so popular, right? Lin could not help but feel a little strange. Although Tian-chan could also refine elixirs, she could basically only provide elixirs of high quality. As for the really popular elixirs of the best quality, he still needed to provide them. However, even if he regularly delivered elixirs to Heavenly Dam Pavilion, due to the fact that he had to travel a lot of times, he could not guarantee the quality of the elixirs. Under normal circumstances, he would only sell a limited amount of elixirs. It was already good enough for Tian-chan and Shueli to retain their popularity, but it was impossible for them to sell so well. After all, if so many people could buy the elixirs that Lin delivered regularly would not last for more than a few days. It was not desirable to have a flash in the pan, and a steady stream was the king's way. Once the supply of the best elixirs was cut off, the loss could not be made up by the hot sales in 1 or 2 days. At that time, the reputation of the entire Tian Pavilion would be damaged. There must be something going on here. Lin suppressed the curiosity in his heart and immediately went over quietly. Sure enough, This scene was not because the business of Tiandan Pavilion was booming, but because there was a villain playing tricks. Everyone, don't miss it. Our medicine sect has invited a senior alchemist from the East Continent, and he can refine 6th-grade elixirs on the spot. Everyone, if you're interested, hurry up and take a look. If you are late, you won't be able to line up. The owner of the voice was a familiar face. It was the deputy manager of the medicine sect, Diao Huanshan. Seeing this, Lin Yi frowned slightly. When the Tiandan Pavilion had just opened for business, this Diao Huanshan had come to make trouble. But at that time, the will of heaven was present and dealt with him casually. He did not expect this clown to jump out again today. Was he not afraid of attracting the will of heaven again? Although he felt strange, Lin Yi did not show up directly. With his current vision, he naturally looked down on such a small character, but this matter was related to the reputation of Tiandan Pavilion. Before the matter was clarified, he was not ready to act rashly. Medicine sect? Isn't this Tiandan Pavilion? A new onlooker in the crowd asked in a low voice. My dear friend, where are you from? Medicine sect and Tiandan Pavilion are mortal enemies. Don't you know this? A busybody next to him curled his lips and said, That's right. Because of the big gimmick of the highest grade elixir, Tiandan Pavilion has stolen a lot of business from the medicine sect in the past 2 years. Now, this deputy manager of the medicine sect is obviously going to steal back the source of customers. TSK. Even a 6th grade elixir can be refined on the spot. That senior alchemist from the East Continent is amazing. Maybe he is the legendary 7th grade alchemist. After all, an ordinary 6th grade alchemist would not dare to do this. Another onlooker explained in admiration. This time, Tiandan Pavilion is really going to be defeated. Although it has all kinds of highest grade elixir. After all, the grade is not high. At most, it is only 5th grade. Even if the 6th grade elixir is not of the highest quality, it is still much more popular than Tiandan Pavilion. What's more, after a certain level, everyone has to consider the 6th grade elixir. Those 4th grade and 5th grade elixir are useless no matter how good the quality is. The onlookers sighed. In the end, it is still because of the lack of foundation. Tiandan Pavilion has only been established for 2 years, while Medicine Sect has been around for hundreds of years. They can easily invite a senior alchemist from the East Continent to hold the fort. What does Tiandan Pavilion have? Someone said disdainfully. Chapter 4976. More and more people were attracted over, but Tianshan and Sydney could only stand in front of their own doors, helpless against the scene in front of them. Besides, Wei Xinjin had also rushed over after hearing the news, but he also looked helpless. Although Jiao Huanshan was very annoying, he didn't do anything to harm Tiandan Pavilion. He was only blocking the door and promoting Medicine Sect. Under these circumstances, they really couldn't do anything to him. Tianshan and the other two could only stare. Even if they were angry, they could only swallow this grievance. Besides, in terms of strength and background, Tiandan Pavilion really wasn't a match for Medicine Sect. There was really nothing they could do. Tianshan and Sydney looked at each other and shook their heads helplessly. Now that their biggest support in Middle Island had left, they couldn't do anything even if they complained. They could only let Diao Huanshan, this clown, do whatever he wanted. Diao Huanshan, don't go overboard. Don't you think you're going overboard? Wei Xinjin couldn't take it anymore. He stood up and interrupted the chattering Diao Huanshan. Overboard? How is it overboard? I'm not stealing or robbing. I'm just standing here to say a few words of justice. How is that overboard? Diao Huanshan sneered and glanced at Wei Xinjin. He sneered and said, I remember that Tiandan Pavilion has only been open for 2 years. Since when did it become so arrogant that people can't even say a few words at the door? You say this is a word of justice? Diao Huanshan, what exactly is your skin made of? You're competing so openly and maliciously, using such a despicable method to steal the customers of the Heavenly Dam Pavilion. And yet you can still say that you're doing this for justice without even blushing? Wei Xinjin coldly snorted as he suppressed his anger. I'm speaking the truth. If you're talking about maliciously competing, why don't you tell me? Which of my words just now wasn't the truth? Which of my words was deliberately slandering Tiandan Pavilion? If there is, you can pick it out for me, and I will apologize on the spot. Diao Huanshan said fearlessly. You. Wei Shenjin suddenly choked. After all, he wasn't like Diao Huanshan, who had been in the business world for a long time. He wasn't as eloquent and nimble as the others. Moreover, Diao Huanshan's words really didn't leave any evidence that could be used against him. He was purely promoting his medicine sect, so it was hard for people to find fault with him. In fact, Wei Shenjin also knew that it was useless to argue with a clown like him. The best way was to overwhelm him with strength. Just like the last time when Tiandan Pavilion opened, the will of heaven could send this guy flying with a casual slap. How would he dare to say anything? Unfortunately, Wei Shenjin wasn't the will of heaven. At the end of the day, he was just a disciple of the Snow Sword sect. He didn't know who was stronger than Diao Huanshan. If they would really fight, it was hard to say who would be sent flying. Seeing that Wei Shenjin was choked and couldn't say a word, Diao Huanshan glanced at Tianchan and Sydney proudly. He said disdainfully, "Brat, you're just a few small characters, and you want to fight with me? Don't you think you're too inexperienced? You can't fight with words, and you can't fight with force either. If you're so capable, call the will of heaven here and let him deal with me." As soon as he said that, the crowd was in an uproar. The will of heaven was a legendary figure that everyone in Middle Island knew. It was rare to see someone who dared to call out the will of heaven's name in public. This medicine sect's vice shopkeeper Diao was really a big shot. Wei Shenjin was so angry that he almost rolled up his sleeves and made a move. In the end, he was stopped by Tianchan and Sydney with a look. At this time, there were no masters who could suppress them. It was hard for the three of them to gain any advantage. Instead, they might suffer a big loss. If Diao Huanshan took this opportunity to tear down the Tiandan Pavilion, then their 2 years of hard work would be wasted. Seeing that Wei Shenjin didn't get angry, Diao Huanshan couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Tianchan and the others guessed correctly. He did have the intention to make a fuss. After all, the existence of the Tiandan Pavilion was bound to steal a lot of business from the medicine sect. If he could take this opportunity to destroy the Tiandan Pavilion, then it would really be the end of it. Even if he had to pay a price for it, it would be worth it. I'm not afraid to tell you that I'm a master in the late stage of the nascent soul realm. If the will of heaven was here, then I wouldn't care. But he isn't here, so I'd like to see who can compete with me. As Diao Huanshan spoke, he released his aura, which instantly shocked everyone around him. The crowd couldn't be blamed for having such a reaction. If it was a place like the East Continent where experts gathered, a nascent soul late-stage cultivator was nothing at all. After all, any random passerby could be a profound ascension stage cultivator or even a mountain opening stage cultivator. Who would be afraid of a nascent soul late-stage cultivator? But this was the Middle Island, and nascent soul stage cultivators were already rare experts here. None of them were easy to deal with. As for the more powerful, profound ascension stage cultivators, they basically didn't go out much. They might not even see one in 10 days or half a month. Just like the situation now, Diao Huanshan, a nascent soul late-stage cultivator, was already an invincible existence. Tianchan and Sydney couldn't help but frown, and Wei Shenjin could only choose to retreat. There was no other way. He wasn't Diao Huanshan's opponent at all. Even if he were to rush forward in a hot-blooded manner, it would only ruin things. Seeing this, Diao Huanshan couldn't help but laugh out loud, while Lin Yi, who was in the crowd, was a little puzzled. The will of heaven had always been a powerful presence on the Heaven Stage Island, so why didn't it seem to be working? This Diao Huanshan actually wasn't afraid that the will of heaven would settle the score with him. What was going on? But Lin Yi didn't think too much about this. Even if Diao Huanshan was a nascent soul late-stage cultivator, he wasn't worthy of Lin Yi's attention at all. Now, even the president of the Golden Stage Academy Alliance, Zhuang Yifan, who was in the Earth Creation late stage, had to address him as a brother and even had to be respectful when speaking to him. Academy presidents like Ling Yuanqing were even more respectful to him. With Lin Yi's current level, There really weren't many people on the middle island that could make it pay attention. Lin, he didn't choose to make a move just now because he wanted to understand the specific situation first. Now that he had heard the gist of it, there was naturally no need to continue listening to the nonsense. You can get lost now. Lin, he walked out from the crowd and didn't even look at Jiao Huanshan. He smiled at Tian Chan and the others, who were pushed so hard that they couldn't speak. I'm back. Tian Chan and Sydney were instantly overjoyed. The two of them had been waiting for Lin Yi for 2 whole years, but in the end, they couldn't get any definite news. They didn't expect that today, at this most embarrassing time, Lin Yi would actually appear. Wei Shenjin was also overjoyed. He was so anxious just now that he didn't know what to do. Lin Yi had entrusted him to look after the Tiandan Pavilion. If this clown, Diao Huanshan, ruined the signboard, how would he have the face to see Lin Yi in the future? Chapter 4977. Who do you think you are? Diao Huanshan didn't recognize Lin Yi at first. He only reacted after noticing the surprised expressions of Tian Chan and the others. He laughed and said, I was wondering who it was. So, it's the manager of the Tiandan Pavilion that disappeared for 2 years. I don't have time to talk nonsense with you. If you don't know what's good for you, get lost. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. Lin Yi glanced at him indifferently. Oh, no wonder you're the manager of the Tiandan Pavilion. You're so young, but you talk big. Jiao Huanshan laughed mockingly and said disdainfully, but you can't scare people with your big talk. Do you think you're the will of heaven? You think you can scare me, a late-stage nascent soul expert, with just a few words? I'll return the same words to you. If you know what's good for you, go back to the Tiandan Pavilion. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. Now that the will of heaven isn't here, it's easy for me to take care of you little brats. Is that so? How did Big Brother the Will of Heaven take care of you last time? Lin Yi suddenly changed the topic and asked, What? Diao Huanshan was stunned. He thought that Lin Yi wanted to use this to embarrass him. However, before he could fly into a rage, Lin Yi suddenly raised his hand and slapped him. Diao Huanshan wanted to fight back subconsciously, but he suddenly realized that he couldn't move at all. There was no other reason. The aura that the other party emitted was too terrifying. It was even stronger than the will of heaven. A profound ascension expert. Diao Huanshan was instantly dumbfounded. The surrounding crowd was also dumbfounded. They all looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. This person was actually a legendary profound ascension expert. Shouldn't such a terrifying person live in seclusion? Why would he appear on the street? According to Jiao Huanshan's words, this person was the manager of the Tiandan Pavilion. Lin Yi didn't use any martial techniques, just a simple wave of true qi, and Jiao Huanshan was sent flying in front of everyone. After all, Jiao Huanshan was only in the late stage of nascent soul. It would be strange if someone like him could still fight back against Lin Yi. Jiao Huanshan was slapped to the point where he was nowhere to be found. Only the sound of people inhaling sharply could be heard. Some of the people who had been persuaded by Jiao Huanshan immediately changed their minds. It seemed that although this heavenly pill pavilion had only been established for a short period of time, the backing behind it was indeed extraordinary. They might not lose to the medicine sect. Everyone at the Tiandan Pavilion have always had a good reputation for doing business. Lin Yi, will leave a sentence here. Whether it's the 5th, 6th, or 7th grade, the Tiandan Pavilion will definitely have the elixirs that the medicine sect has. Even if the medicine sect doesn't have them, the Tiandan Pavilion will have them. Everyone, please wait and see. Lin Yi cupped his hands and said to the crowd in a clear voice. As soon as he said that, the crowd immediately went into an uproar. Everyone's appetite was immediately whetted. Jiao Huanshan had spent so much effort to steal business. In the end, after Lin Yi's trick, not only did he not attract the crowd to the medicine sect, but he also looked forward to the Tiandan Pavilion even more. How was he here to ruin their reputation? He was clearly here to give them warmth after saying that. Lin Yi walked into the Tiandan Pavilion, surrounded by Tian Chan and Sydney. 2 years had passed, but the layout inside had not changed at all. It was still the same as before, which made people sigh with emotion. The three of them went upstairs. As for the business downstairs, it was temporarily taken care of by Wei Shinjin. In any case, when a business was busy in the past, Wei Shinjin had helped a lot. After 2 years, he was already familiar with the business. "You finally come to see us." As soon as they entered the room, before the door was even closed, Tian-chan and Sydney rushed into Lin Yi's arms. "It's been hard on you these 2 years. It's my fault. I should have come to see you earlier," Lin Yi said guiltily. The two girls sniffled at the same time. In the past 2 years, they had indeed felt a little sad. It was not that they felt that it was too hard to support the Tiandan Pavilion by themselves, but it was purely because they could not see Lin Yi. Although they also knew that Lin Yi could not be by their side all the time, it was not too much to see him twice a year. In the end, they had not seen each other for more than 2 years, and they were almost looking for a husband. "It's good that you know. You're not allowed to leave the two of us like this in the future, or else." Tian-chan suddenly paused when she said that. "Or else what?" Lin Yi smiled. "Or else I'll kick you." Tian-chan suddenly blushed and gave Lin Yi a light kick. "Me too." On the other side, Sydney followed suit. She grabbed Lin Yi, but it turned into a light hug. Lin Yi did not know whether to laugh or cry. Of course, the two girls did not really want to kick him. They were just being intimate. "We haven't seen each other for so long. When did the two of you learn to kick people? It's too cruel. Looks like I can only come and pay my respects to you more often in the future," Lin Yi said, pretending to be honest. "You said it yourself. You can't go back on your words." Tian-chan and Sydney looked at each other and smiled. "Oh yeah, I wonder how Brother Tian is doing recently. From what Jiao Huanshan said just now, could he not be in Middle Island?" Lin Yi asked. "Yes, he is indeed not in Middle Island. If Brother Tian was here, would Jiao Huanshan dare to be so presumptuous?" Sydney said indignantly. With the will of Heaven's illustrious reputation in Middle Island, even if Jiao Huanshan had 10 guts, he would not dare to come and cause trouble. If he really dared to come in front of the will of Heaven, he would definitely be slapped to death. Oh, could it be that Brother Tian has something important to do and has gone to other Heaven Stage Islands? Lin Yi asked curiously. Just like the last time Chu Wentian went to West Island, the will of Heaven was also the deputy island master of Middle Island. It was normal for him to represent Middle Island to go to other Heaven Stage Islands. That's not it. Brother Tian's strength has reached the bottleneck of nascent soul perfected, so he left for East Continent some time ago. He plans to break through to profound ascension there. Tian-chan explained. "I see." Lin Yi nodded. If it was in the past, he would definitely wonder why he had to go to East Continent to break through to profound ascension, but with the experience of being a giant, he now completely understood. Although it was not impossible to break through to profound ascension in other places, under normal circumstances, it was difficult to rely on one's own strength to trigger the thunder punishment. It must be met with the right weather. To reach the intensity of the thunder punishment, a normal thunderstorm was absolutely not enough. It was only possible when the heavenly thunder was strong to a certain extent. To put it bluntly, it all depended on the will of the heavens. Chapter 4978. Lin Yi couldn't help but shake his head secretly. It was a pity that they had missed each other. Otherwise, it was very likely that they would have reunited with the will of heaven on the Road of Giants. That would have been a pleasant surprise. There's no one good in the medicine sect. Not only is there a sinister villain like Jiao Huanshan, even the shopkeeper, Tong Yangsuo, is a sanctimonious hypocrite. These 2 years, in order to put pressure on our Tiandan Pavilion, they have used all kinds of despicable means. They didn't dare to go too far because Big Brother Tian was here, but now that Big Brother Tian is gone, they immediately climbed all over us. This is intolerable, Sydney said angrily. These people are indeed shameless. Our strength is no match for Jiao Huanshan. Fortunately, Lin Yi arrived in time. Otherwise, I don't know how this matter would have ended. Tian-chan couldn't help but frown. Hee, you guys are worrying too much. From the situation just now, this Jiao Huanshan is actually a sensible person. Although he came to cause trouble, he didn't dare to do anything. He only dared to curse. I guess he's afraid that one day, Big Brother Tion will come back to settle the score with him. Lin, he smiled faintly. There was a saying that a monk could run away, but not the temple. Even if they destroyed Tiandan Pavilion while the will of heaven was not around, the will of heaven would come back one day. If they were purely competing in business, then the will of heaven might not do anything to them. After all, as the deputy island master of Middle Island, he had to care about public opinion. However, if Jiao Huanshan dared to make a move on Tian Shan and the others, he would really be seeking his own death. When that time came, even if the will of heaven killed him to vent his anger, the medicine sect would not dare to stop him. They might even have to offer them up. This was a matter of life and death. Jiao Huanshan still weighed the pros and cons very clearly. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to become the deputy shopkeeper of the medicine sect. Even so, he's still despicable. He dared to come to our Tiandan Pavilion and steal our customers. This is too much, Sydney said angrily. She really couldn't swallow this. Although Tiandan Pavilion was supported by Tian Shan and Tian Shan, Tian Shan was only in charge of alchemy. Sydney was the one in charge of the business. Only she knew how much effort and sweat had gone into it. For Tiandan Pavilion's reputation, she cared more than anyone else. Even Tian Shan could not compare, let alone Lin Yi. This time, because of Lin Yi's sudden appearance, although Jiao Huanshan had indeed received the punishment he deserved, and judging from the reactions of the crowd, it seemed like he hadn't stolen many customers. It still left an impact. Tiandan Pavilion still suffered a loss in the end. That's right. A kind person will be bullied, and a kind horse will be ridden. We can't just let this matter go like this. If we don't let the medicine sect suffer enough and learn their lesson, it won't be just the medicine sect in the future. Other large and small chambers of commerce will also follow suit. Then, we can forget about doing business, Linny said with a nod. Then what do we do now? Do we go to their door to demand an explanation? Or should we just give them a taste of their own medicine and think of a way to steal their customers? Sydney asked hurriedly. That won't be necessary. Although it's not impossible to cause trouble at their door, it's still not a good idea. Lin, he shook his head. With his powerful strength that could rival the early stage of the mountain opening stage, he wasn't afraid even if he faced the entire medicine sect alone. If the other party couldn't bring out enough experts, it was not impossible to bully them with their strength. However, this was ultimately not the best plan, because this way, the medicine sect would become the victim and public opinion would unknowingly lean towards the medicine sect. Other than being able to vent their anger, there was no benefit to Tiandan Pavilion at all. Could it be that you've already thought of a good idea? Tian Shan and Sydney's eyes lit up at the same time. It's not a good idea. As long as you have absolute strength, any countermeasures and schemes are superfluous. Linny smiled and changed the topic. Let's not talk about this. Let's first find out about the situation of the medicine sect. After reuniting after a long time, the three of them had a moment of warmth. Lin even brought the two girls downstairs. Wei Shinjin, who had been waiting for a long time, hurriedly greeted him. Boss Linny, you're finally here. You've worked hard during this period of time. Lin smiled and nodded. He had just heard from Tian Shan and Sydney that Wei Shinjin had been coming to Tiandan Pavilion almost every other day for the past 2 years, and all this was just because of an order from Lin before he left. It could be seen that this guy was indeed a loyal person, and saving him back then was not in vain. Boss, you're overpraising me. In fact, I just put in some effort, and I can't help much. Like today's matter, I can't do anything at all. Fortunately, boss, you came, or else I really don't know what to do. Wei Shinjin smiled bitterly. Don't blame yourself. This matter can't be blamed on you. After all, it's too much to ask you to deal with Jiao Huanshan. Don't worry, I'll handle it myself. Lin comforted him, and then said, By the way, you're more familiar with this place. How about you help me find out about the specific situation of the medicine sect? Okay, boss, don't worry. Leave this matter to me. Wei Shinjin immediately patted his chest and accepted the order. It was not realistic for him to deal with Jiao Huanshan, who was in the late nascent soul stage. but it was a small matter to ask for information. After all, he was a native of Middle Island. Wei Shinjin was extremely efficient. He went out for less than half an hour and came back. He couldn't wait to report to Lin. Boss Lin, I found out that the medicine sect invited the high-level alchemist from the East Continent is called Zheng Dongsheng. I heard that he's Zheng Dongjue's distant cousin. Zheng Dongsheng? Lin, he was slightly stunned when he heard this name. He felt that it was inexplicably familiar. After a while, he realized that the culprit who caused Qin Yu's tragedy, Zheng Tianguang's father, the number 2 alchemist in Morningstar Academy, was called Zheng Dongsheng. No wonder he wasn't in Morningstar Academy. He came to Middle Island to visit his relatives. Wait, isn't Zheng Dongsheng from the Alchemy Hall? Since Zheng Dongsheng is his distant cousin, why would he go to the medicine sect? I don't think the Alchemy Hall has a good relationship with the medicine sect, right? Linny couldn't help but feel strange. He had heard from Kai Zhongyang that the Alchemy Hall didn't have a good relationship with the other businesses. If it wasn't for the alchemy Gajong Liju, the Alchemy Hall, they would have been attacked by the other businesses a long time ago. Under these circumstances, why would an alchemist who had a relationship with the Alchemy Hall go to the medicine sect to concoct pills? Chapter 4979. Central Island is thousands of miles away from Dongzhou, and Tang Yangsua isn't related to this Zheng Dongsheng at all. How did he manage to invite him to Central Island? Lin, he was still confused. That's not strange. Medicine Sect's headquarters may be here, but I heard that they're doing pretty well in Dongzhou as well, and they have connections with a lot of forces in Dongzhou. This Zheng Dongsheng seems to be working with them, and that's why Tang Yangsua invited him here. Although he's Zheng Dongjue's cousin, it's not like Zheng Dongjue can control where he wants to go, Wei Shinjin explained. That's true. Lin, he nodded, but he still felt that something wasn't right, but he couldn't put his finger on it. After a pause, Lin, he turned to Xin Yan and asked, "Right, how's the situation in the Hall of Elixir recently? Has Master Zhang been back these 2 years?" "No, he hasn't shown himself for a long time, and Zheng Dongjue has been in charge of the Hall of Elixir these 2 years," Xin Yan said with a sigh. This situation wasn't good for her, and Zheng Dongjue still hadn't given up on her. Although, because of the threat of the will of heaven, Zheng Dongjue wouldn't dare do anything for his grandson, but now that the will of heaven had gone to Dongzhou, and Elixir God Zhang Liju was nowhere to be seen, the Hall of Elixir had almost become his rule. If Zheng Dongjue wanted to do something bad, Tian Chan wouldn't be able to resist at all. Even if Zhang Liju's disciples like Hou Guanqi and Kai Zhongyang came out to help her, they still wouldn't be able to stop Zheng Dongjue. Lin, he was prepared for this answer, but he couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Although he came to Central Island to see Tian Chan and Sydney, he still had a glimmer of hope. If he was lucky enough to meet Zhang Liju, then those sleeping beauties of his could be saved. Unfortunately, this was destined to only be a beautiful fantasy. Now, it seemed that it would not be easy to meet this cheap master of his. He had to admit that the time had not come yet. As they were talking, a commotion suddenly came from outside. Someone shouted loudly outside the door, "Who just beat up the people from our famous medicine sect? Hurry up and come out." Hearing this sudden noise, the guests in the Tiandan pavilion ran out one after another. Suddenly, a large group of onlookers gathered outside, pointing and talking. Today, the Tiandan pavilion and the medicine sect really clashed, and it was destined that there would be no peace here. Lin Yi, Tian Chan, and the others looked at each other and followed them out of the door. At a glance, they saw a middle-aged man surrounded by the crowd. When Lin Yi saw the symbol on the man's sleeve, he was immediately stunned. "You're the profound ascending stage master who injured Diao Huanshan." The middle-aged man's gaze fell on Lin Yi. "Yes, that's me. Who are you from the Morningstar Academy?" Lin Yi frowned slightly. The middle-aged man was originally aggressive, but when he heard this, he was a little stunned. He hadn't said anything yet. How did this guy know that he was from the Morningstar Academy? Little did he know that Lin Yi had been in the Morningstar Academy for so long, and even got the title of honorary dean. If he couldn't even recognize the symbol of the Morningstar Academy, wouldn't he be blind? Oh, I didn't expect you to have some eyesight. You actually know that I'm from the Morningstar Academy. Yes, I'm the Chancellor of the Morningstar Academy in the East Continent, Zhao UK. The middle-aged man introduced himself, then sneered and said, I heard that you're a profound, ascending stage master, so you dare to bully our medicine sect's vice shopkeeper Diao. Why don't you try bullying me too? Before he finished speaking, Zhao UK suddenly released a powerful aura. The strength of the profound, ascending middle stage was revealed in an instant, and it immediately shocked the surrounding people. Profound ascending stage masters were rare existences, and today they saw two of them at once. It was really worth watching this show. Tian Chan, Sydney, and Wei Xinjin's expressions changed at the same time. Although they knew that Lin Yi was a profound ascending stage master, he was only at the early profound ascending stage, while the opponent was at the profound ascending middle stage, which was 2 stages higher. Even with Lin Yi's strength, he might not be Zhao Yuke's opponent. However, Lin Yi seemed to be unaware of all this. He still looked at Zhao Yuke indifferently and frowned slightly. You're a Chancellor of the Morningstar Academy, and you actually came to the Middle Island to be a thug for the medicine sect. Don't you think it's too embarrassing for the Morningstar Academy? What do you know? Zhao Yuke's face couldn't help but sink. Of course, he also knew that it was a bit embarrassing to do so. After all, the identity of a Chancellor of the Morningstar Academy in the Eastern Continent was not ordinary. Perhaps it was not dazzling in the Eastern Continent where there were many masters, but after coming out, it represented the face of the Morningstar Academy. Once he did such a dirty thing, even the reputation of the Morningstar Academy would be affected. However, Zhao Yuke had no choice. He was able to gain a foothold in Morningstar Academy because of Zheng Dongsheng. This time, Zheng Dongsheng had come out to earn some extra money, and he was purely a follower. Now that this mess had arisen, the medicine sect could not solve it by themselves, and Zheng Dongsheng could not possibly step in personally. Who else could it be other than him? So, you insist on being a lackey of the medicine sect? Lin Yi's originally calm expression became a bit more serious. In any case, he was the honorary dean of the Morningstar Academy. He did not want to damage the reputation of the Morningstar Academy because of this kind of thing, but if the other party refused to listen, then there was no other way. Kid, you better watch your mouth. Originally, I was only prepared to stop when the time was right, but if you really don't know what's good for you and provoke me, in the end, you will be the one to suffer. If you know what's good for you, hurry up and apologize. Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't make a mistake. Zhao Yuke said with an unkind expression. I'll pass this on to you. Seeing that you are from the Morningstar Academy, I don't want to hurt you, so I can let you go. Lin, he shook his head lightly and said, Don't want to hurt me? Ha! You're quite an interesting kid. You're not very strong, but you're very good at acting tough. A profound ascending primary stage actually wants to let me, a profound ascending middle stage, go. In front of so many people, such big words really come out of your mouth. Zhao Yuke laughed. You don't believe me? In any case, you are from the East Continent. Is it strange for you to challenge someone of a higher level? Lin looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. That's right, this kind of thing is indeed very common in the East Continent where geniuses gather. But is this the East Continent? Don't you think carefully before trying to scare people? Or are you also from the East Continent? Zhao Yuke looked up and down at Lin Yi and said. Chapter 4980. What do you mean? Are you a disciple of the Morningstar Academy? Zhao Yuke was slightly surprised. This kind of thing was not impossible. This person was a rare, profound, ascending stage expert of Middle Island, and with one glance he could recognize that he was from the Morningstar Academy. Combining these two conditions, the possibility of this guy being a disciple of the Morningstar Academy was not low. It was already embarrassing enough for him to be a thug for the medicine sect. If he were to go against a disciple of the Morningstar Academy, how would he be able to stand in the Morningstar Academy in the future? I'm a friend of your dean, Ling Yuanqing, and also the master of your chief alchemist, Qing Danzi. What do you think? Lin, he said lightly. Zhao Yuke suddenly rolled on the ground laughing, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He pointed at Lin Yi and said breathlessly, If you say you are a disciple of the Morning Star Academy, then at least you have some credibility. Maybe I will really believe it. I didn't expect you to be such an interesting person. You are actually a friend of our dean and the master of Qing Danzi. You should have a limit to your nonsense, right? Not only Zhao Yuke, but the surrounding people also felt that it was too ridiculous. Even if they did not know much about the Morning Star Academy, they at least knew what the dean and the chief alchemist represented. This person in charge of the Tiandan Pavilion was really good at boasting. I have already said what I need to say. I advise you to turn around and leave now. I can pretend that I have never seen you. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. Lin Yi's expression was still calm, as usual. He did not care about the people's sarcasm at all. You don't have to give me any face. However, seeing as you've spent so much effort to make up such a ridiculous lie, I can give you some face. At the very least, I can guarantee that I won't beat you to death. Zhao Yuke laughed unscrupulously. If that is the case, then there is nothing else to say. Lin Yi smiled helplessly. He had just come out of the Morning Star Academy, but he turned around and wanted to attack the Chancellor of the Morning Star Academy. He was really the only honorary dean like this. You're still pretending at this time? Kid, are you addicted to acting tough? Let me wake you up. Zhao Yuke sneered and was about to attack Lin Yi. However, before he could make a move, Lin Yi had already appeared within 10 feet in front of him in a flash. Lin Yi's ghost-like speed had startled him, a mysterious ascendant middle stage master. Before he could react, he received a heavy blow on his chest. His entire body flew out uncontrollably on the spot, and he was kicked out of the market street by Lin Yi. Hiss! The audience gasped one after another, and everyone looked at Lin Yi as if they were looking at a monster. This was a great expert of the profound ascension middle stage. How could he not even last one move in front of the owner of the Tiandan Pavilion? Could it be that he was the kind of trash who only had a level but no strength? Let's go in. Lin Yi turned his head and called out to Tian Chan and the others as if nothing had happened. With his current strength, he didn't need to use his trump cards to deal with ordinary profound ascension middle stage experts. Any combination of 3 attribute martial techniques was enough. Oh, Tian Chan and the others looked at each other and nodded in a daze. They had always known that Lin Yi was powerful, and it was common for him to challenge someone of a higher level. But even if it was the same level, the difficulty of the profound ascension stage was at least 10 times higher than the nascent soul stage. Not to mention, looking at Lin Yi's calm manner, he didn't even put the opponent of the profound ascension middle stage in his eyes. Just how strong was he? The Tiandan Pavilion is really unfathomable. The onlookers were completely stirred up at this moment. Although doing business was not directly related to strength, in this world where the weak were prey to the strong, people were still subconsciously more willing to believe those who were strong. At least their words were more reliable and more secure. Lin Yi had only arrived here for less than 2 hours. First, he slapped away the late nascent soul stage Diao Huanshan, and now he kicked away the profound ascension middle stage Zhao Yuke. His strength was simply so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. It was equivalent to advertising for the Tiandan Pavilion twice. Not only did it not lose its popularity, it increased a lot. It was human nature to worship the strong. Since the Heavenly Dan Pavilion had such a valiant person in charge, it was naturally full of gimmicks. Many of the people who gathered here from all directions just wanted to catch a glimpse of this expert. As long as they were guided a little, these people would all become ready-made customers. Outside the market street, a miserable figure climbed up from the messy garbage heap. It was Zhao Yuke, who was kicked away by Lin Yi. For the sake of the Morning Star Academy, Lin Yi still left some leeway. Otherwise, he would have long been a corpse that no one cared about. But even so, Zhao Yuke still suffered quite a heavy injury. His heart was filled with shock, and he was starting to believe that Lin Yi had some sort of relationship with Morning Star Academy. After all, there weren't many geniuses at the profound ascension stage who could still easily challenge those of a higher level. Only in the East Continent were they more common. Limping back to the famous medicine sect, Tang Yangsuo was accompanying Zheng Dongsheng to drink tea. When the two saw Zhao Yuke's appearance, They were shocked. Jiao Huanshan was like this before. Why was he, a profound ascension middle stage master, still like this? What's going on? Could it be that even you're not a match for that, Lenny? Zheng Dongsheng frowned and said angrily. He was just boasting to Tong Yangsuo that with Zhao Yuk's strength, it would be a piece of cake. Who would have thought that this would be the result? It was like slapping his own face in front of Tong Yangsuo. No wonder he was angry. Master Zheng, I am incompetent. I am indeed not a match for him. Zhao Yuke said in shame. How could this be? Didn't Jiao Huanshan just say that Lin Yi is only at the early stage of the profound ascension stage? With the strength of you, Chancellor Zhao, who is at the middle stage of the profound ascension stage, you can't deal with him? Could it be that Jiao Huanshan was wrong about this bastard who can't do anything right? Tong Yangsuo's face darkened. He had never looked at the Tiandan pavilion in the eyes. These 2 years, he did not dare to act rashly because of the deterrence of the will of heaven. Now that the will of heaven had left, and he had invited experts like Zheng Dongsheng and Zhao Yuke from the East Continent, dealing with a mere Tiandan pavilion should be a piece of cake. How could there be so many twists and turns? Chapter 4981. There's such a thing. Zheng Dongsheng and Tong Yangsuo were both shocked. If it was just Zhao Yuk's defeat, they would not be so shocked, but Zhao Yuke was defeated by someone 2 levels higher than him. This meant that the opponent was no small matter. Not only that, the kid also said. Zhao Yuke grinned awkwardly. What else did he say? Tong Yangsuo quickly asked. He also said that he had some connections with our Morningstar Academy. Zhao Yuke said with a strange expression. Connections? What connections? Could he be a disciple of our Morningstar Academy? Zheng Dongsheng's eyelids twitched. Many people on Middle Island had studied in the East Continent Academy, so it was not impossible to encounter such a coincidence. That's not it. He said he was a friend of Dean Ling Yuanqing and the master of Grandmaster Qing Danzi. Zhao Yuke braced himself and said, What? Zheng Dongsheng was so shocked that his jaw dropped. He quickly reacted and frowned. That's impossible. As far as I know, Qing Danzi's master died a long time ago. How could he appear here? In the world of cultivation, it was not good to judge a person by their appearance. No matter how young they looked, they could be old monsters who had lived for hundreds or thousands of years. They just maintained their youthful appearance, just like Zhuang Yifan. But this guy claimed to be Qing Danzi's master. That was pure nonsense. That's right. Such shameless boasting. This person must be a liar. Tong Yangsuo, who was at the side, quickly asserted. Even if it was possible, he had to immediately dispel Zheng Dongsheng's suspicions. Otherwise, if Lin Yi really was Ling Yuanqing's friend, Qing Danzi's master, then what was the point of fighting for the medicine sect? If that was really the case, then he might as well not do anything else. He could only hurry to the Heavenly Dan Pavilion and personally apologize. There was no other choice. Zhao Yuke did not speak. Of course, he did not believe Lin Yi's nonsense. But with the strength Lin Yi had displayed, he was definitely not an ordinary disciple of the Morningstar Academy. Maybe he really did know Ling Yuanqing and Qing Danzi, which was why he was so unscrupulous. There's no doubt about it. This kid is trying to play tricks on our Morningstar Academy. He's really a weirdo. Zheng Dongsheng snorted disdainfully in front of the number 2 pill refiner of the Morningstar Academy. What was the difference between this and running to hell and pretending to be a ghost? This is too much. Grandmaster Zheng, what do you think we should do next? We can't just let this brat wantonly tarnish the reputation of your Morningstar Academy, right? Tong said with anticipation. Although I don't really care about the reputation of the Morningstar Academy, we really can't ignore this kid. Otherwise, people will think that we're afraid of him, and maybe they'll treat him as some big shot. Zheng Dongsheng frowned slightly. That's right. 2 of us have already been killed by him. We can't continue to encourage his arrogance. It's a pity that our medicine sect's guest experts on Middle Island aren't strong enough. We still have to trouble Master Zheng to think of a way. Tong Yangsuo quickly said. The guest experts on his side were at most in the nascent soul stage. Their strength might not be comparable to Jiao Huanshan's, let alone dealing with Lin Yi. Only Zheng Dongsheng could deal with this matter. Of course, Zheng Dongsheng was an pill refiner and was not good at fighting. However, with his superior status, he did not need to deal with this kind of matter personally. As long as he sent someone to spread the word, there would naturally be a large number of experts rushing over like ducks. A mere Lin, he would not be a problem at all. Since this Lin, he can fight an opponent who is a higher level than him, he's really not weak. We can't underestimate him too much. I'm afraid ordinary experts won't be able to deal with him. Zheng Dongsheng pondered for a moment and then said, "How about this? Let's not act rashly. When the time comes, we'll let Deputy Island Master Wu deal with him." Deputy Island Master Wu? Tong Yangsuo was stunned, and he said in surprise, "Is this Deputy Island Master Wu, that Master Zheng mentioned, the Executive Deputy Island Master Wu Miao, who suddenly rose to power last year?" The power of Middle Island's Island Master Cabinet had always been divided among 5 people, namely, 1 Island Master and 4 Deputy Island Masters. The actual power of the Deputy Island Master was the greatest among the 4 Deputy Island Masters. Basically, he could have a say in all matters, big or small. In terms of power and status, he was only below the Island Master. He could be considered as the number 2 figure in the official forces of Middle Island. Although the Wu Miao that Tong Yangsuo mentioned was very experienced in the Island Master Pavilion, he had always kept a low profile. In terms of presence, he was even less prominent than the Will of Heaven. After all, although the Will of Heaven's strength was low on the surface, he was a legendary figure that everyone knew. Moreover, he was a strong person, and his true strength was not weak even in the Island Master Pavilion. However, this Wu Miao was not really incompetent. He was just hiding his strength. Last year, when the Island Master Pavilion elected a new Executive Deputy Island Master, he, who had never been looked upon favorably by the outside world, suddenly made a move and became a medium-sized dark horse. That's right. That's him. Zheng Dongsheng nodded. He is the number 2 official of Middle Island. Even Deputy Island Masters like the Will of Heaven and Chu Wentian are overshadowed by him. Also, I heard that he has always kept people at arm's length, and very few people can befriend him. Master Zheng actually managed to invite him? Tong Yangsuo was even more astonished. The Chamber of Commerce had always been very attentive to the Island Master Pavilion's officials. Even if they could not become their own people, they had to befriend them. At the very least, they could not allow them to become obstacles. Otherwise, it would be difficult for them to do business. Tong Yangsuo had put in a lot of effort in this regard, especially the newly promoted Executive Deputy Island Master, Wu Miao. She was an important person that he did his best to befriend. Unfortunately, Wu Miao had always been indifferent toward him. At most, she would give him some gifts during the holidays. She did not even have the right to enter his house. That's right. Deputy Island Master Wu is indeed aloof and arrogant. However, don't forget my status, Shopkeeper Tong. Other people can only beg him, but he has to beg me. I'm his distinguished guest, said Zheng Dongsheng with a proud laugh. That's right. Master Zheng, a high-rank pill refiner like you, has an extraordinary status no matter where you go. Ordinary people can't even invite you. No matter how aloof and arrogant Wu Miao is, he will definitely receive pills. Tong Yangsuo smiled apologetically. Chapter 4982. This was the advantage of being a pill refiner. Their statuses were very high, and even high and mighty figures had to humble themselves in front of high-ranking pill refiners like them. Zheng Dongsheng enjoyed this feeling the most. So that's how it is. It seems that Deputy Island Master Wu still has a good eye. Burning incense and praying to the Buddha, one is afraid of worshipping the wrong temple. However, Deputy Island Master Wu has really found the right person this time. With you, Grandmaster Zheng, personally taking action, wouldn't refining pills be a piece of cake? Tong Yangsuo took the opportunity to flatter Zheng Dongsheng. It was no wonder Zheng Dongsheng agreed to help so easily. In the past, it would have been very difficult to get this great person to help, no matter how high the price was. Zheng Dongsheng laughed heartily. He enjoyed Tong Yangsua's flattery very much. After some thought, he said, "How about this? I'll write a letter to Deputy Island Master Wu personally. Shopkeeper Tong, get someone to deliver it to him. He will definitely come." "Okay. Thank you, Master Zheng." Tong Yangsua was elated. Although Lin Yi was unexpectedly strong, if he could get Wu Miao to help, a mere Lin Yi would be nothing. While Zheng Dongsheng and Tong Yangsua were talking, Diao Huanshan, who was limping like Zhao Yuke, suddenly came to the door with a bitter expression. "Why aren't you recuperating? Why are you here?" Tong Yangsua frowned when he saw this. If Zhao Yuke, who came with Zheng Dongsheng, hadn't suffered a great loss, he wouldn't have treated this guy nicely. After all, he had embarrassed himself in front of Zheng Dongsheng. "Shopkeeper Tong, Master Zheng, bad news." Diao Huanshan smiled bitterly. "What bad news?" "Master Zheng and I are here." "What did go wrong? Why are you so flustered? That's not proper." Tong Yangsua reprimanded him. "Shopkeeper Tong, it's really bad news. Someone just reported that Tiandan Pavilion has started to place orders for refining pills, and they're taking orders for 7th grade pills," said Diao Huanshan. "What?" Tong Yangsua and Zheng Dongsheng stood up in shock. "It's true. Their Heavenly Elixir Pavilion has accumulated a lot of popularity over the past 2 years because of their high-quality elixirs. Their reputation has always been good. Their only weakness is that the grade of their elixirs is not high enough. But now, this weakness has become their strength. A 7th grade elixir. This is even better than our medicine sect," Diao Huanshan said with a bitter face. It was rare for them to invite Zheng Dongsheng to take charge. The famous medicine sect had already overshadowed the Heavenly Dan Pavilion in terms of fame by announcing that they would be able to refine a 6th grade pill on the spot. Coupled with Jiao Huanshan's deliberate provocation, the two sects were like fire and water. Under the storm, they became the focus of public opinion. The famous medicine sect took this opportunity to gain a lot of attention and attracted a lot of people. However, now that the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion had spread the news of a 7th grade elixir, the popularity that the famous medicine sect had just attracted was instantly snatched away. Even the customers who had previously reserved the 6th grade elixir also canceled their subscriptions one after another. It was obvious that they had gone to the Heavenly Elixir Pavilion. They had worked so hard, but in the end, their hard work had gone to someone else. How could they endure this? Impossible. How can a small Tiandan pavilion refine 7th grade pills? Tong Yangsua's first reaction was disbelief. 7th grade alchemists were rare in these heaven stage islands. Even if there were one or two, they would soon be poached by the East Continent colleges. How could a small pill shop like Tiandan Pavilion, which had no background, afford to raise a 7th grade alchemist? Even if they took out all their profits, it would be far from enough. Since he dared to say such things, it means that he does have the ability. Otherwise, he would be courting death. I don't think that Lin Yi is so stupid. Could it be that this Tiandan Pavilion also has a background in the East Continent? Zheng Dongxing said thoughtfully. This was the only possibility he could think of. Tiandan Pavilion, like the medicine sect here, had spent a lot of money to invite a high-level alchemist like him. That was why they dared to say such arrogant words. That's impossible. I've spent a lot of effort to investigate the details of Tiandan Pavilion in the past 2 years. This is purely a small pill shop. It only has the background of the will of heaven. It has nothing to do with the East Continent, Tong Yangsua said with certainty. Tiandan Pavilion was now a thorn in his side. If he hadn't investigated it clearly, he wouldn't have dared to let Diao Huanshan come to provoke it. If that's the case, then we really have to think about it. Maybe there's a master behind it. Zheng Dongsheng frowned and then said to Tong Yangsa, "How about this? I don't need to write a letter. Manager Tong, you can directly bring my name card to invite Deputy Island Master Wu. There's no time to lose. Let's go now." "Okay." Tong Yangsa nodded repeatedly. "Also, why don't you ask my cousin to come as well? One more person means one more force," Zheng Dongxing added. This, Tong Yangsua hesitated for a moment. The cousin Zheng Dongxing mentioned was naturally the deputy hall master of the Pill Hall, Zheng Dongjue. On the surface, his relationship with the medicine sect and the Five Elements commerce had always been bad. Naturally, he didn't get along well with Zheng Dongjue, the person in charge of the pill hall. However, this was only on the surface. Zheng Dongsheng naturally knew about this. However, if he invited Wu Miao this time, it would definitely be suspicious if he invited Zheng Dongjue as well. There's nothing to hesitate about. Deputy Island Master Wu is someone we can trust. We have to let him know about this relationship sooner or later. Why don't we take this opportunity to confess in person? This way, we can leave a good impression of him. Just tell him that it's my idea. Dongjue won't object, Zheng Dongsheng instructed. Okay. Tong Yangsuo nodded and immediately went out to call for Wu Miao. An hour later, there were a few more VIPs in the medicine sect's VIP room. Zheng Dongsheng sat on the main seat, while his cousin, Zheng Dongjue, sat on his right. Tong Yangsuo sat next to Zheng Dongjue. On Zheng Dongsheng's left was a stern-looking man with a long beard. He was undoubtedly the new deputy island master of Middle Island, Wu Miao. However, there was an unexpected and uninvited guest sitting next to Wu Miao. It was Southern Aurora from Middle Island's Cultivators Academy. With Southern Polar Light's strength and status, even though he had lost the competition against Tian Xing for the position of Deputy Island Master, he was still considered an extraordinary person. However, he had never had any dealings with the medicine sect, so Tong Yangsuo naturally would not specially invite him. The reason why he had appeared here this time was actually a coincidence. The reason was simple. When Tong Yangsuo went to invite Wu Miao, Southern Aurora happened to be there. When he heard that it was to deal with Tiandan Pavilion and Lin Yi, he immediately came on a whim to join the fun. Chapter 4983. Master Zheng, you're being too polite. Since you summoned us personally, how could we not come? Wu Miao smiled faintly. Everyone nodded in agreement. Apart from Zheng Dongsheng, Wu Miao had the highest status among them. Only Zheng Dongjue, who was the person in charge of the pill hall, could stand on equal footing with her. As for people like Nantian Aurora and Tong Yangsuo, they could only suck up to her. Zheng Dongsheng laughed. He was very satisfied with everyone's attitude. I invited everyone here because medicine sect has encountered some difficulties and needs everyone's help to think of a solution. I heard it's about Tiandan Pavilion, asked Wu Miao. Tong Yangsuo had told her a little about it, but she did not know the specifics. That's right. This small Tiandan Pavilion isn't a big deal, so there's no need to mobilize so many people. However, Lin Yi from Tiandan Pavilion has returned. Furthermore, he brought Jiao Huanshan and Zhao Yuke with him. Now, he even announced that he's selling 7th grade pills. He's really aggressive, said Zheng Dongsheng with a slight frown. 7th grade pills? Everyone was shocked. 7th grade pills were extremely rare even in the East Continent, let alone in Middle Island. Even Wu Miao, the managing deputy island master, was eager to get a 7th grade pill, let alone everyone else. Tiandan Pavilion has always been our medicine sect's sworn enemy. If they gain power, it will be a huge blow to our medicine sect. That's why I implore everyone to help us. Medicine sect will definitely reward you handsomely, said Tong Yangsuo sincerely. I heard that Tiandan Pavilion is backed by the will of heaven. Is that true? Asked Wu Miao. That's right. That's true. Tong Yangsuo nodded. In that case, I really have to help medicine sect. Although the will of heaven is my colleague, he's arrogant and despotic. I'm sure Tiandan Pavilion is using his name to commit crimes. Otherwise, how could they have grown so much in just 2 years? Who would believe that they aren't involved in some shady business? Said Wu Miao gloomily. That's right. Deputy Island Master Wu is right. Tong Yangsuo was elated. In his opinion, Tiandan Pavilion would be doomed as long as Wu Miao agreed to help. Deputy Island Master Wu, if you don't mind, feel free to let me know. I'm more than happy to help you deal with Tiandan Pavilion, interjected Nantian Aurora. Oh, Deputy Dean Nantian is also interested? Tong Yangsuo was delighted. The will of heaven is arrogant and despotic. Deputy Island Master Wu isn't the only one who doesn't get along with him. Don't forget that I fought with him 2 years ago for the position of Deputy Island Master. Furthermore, I also have a grudge against Tianan Pavilion's Lin Yi. This time, I can teach him a lesson. Nantion Aurora sneered. Very good. It seems like Deputy Dean Nantion is also a kindred spirit. Deputy Island Master Wu, you're in the wrong. Why didn't you introduce such a good friend to us earlier? If he didn't happen to be a guest at your residence, I'm afraid we wouldn't have had the chance to get to know each other. It's a pity we didn't meet sooner. Zheng Dongsheng took the opportunity to win Nantion Aurora's heart. It was true that alchemists had a transcendent status, but at the same time, they relied on a wide range of connections to live comfortably. Nantion Aurora was also a #1 figure in this Middle Island. This time, they had a common enemy, so their relationship was naturally closer. Being able to sit together and speak the same language, they were ready-made friends. Grandmaster Zheng is indeed a person who makes friends. I feel the same way. You're famous in the alchemy world. I only regret that I never had the chance to meet you. Today, I've finally fulfilled one of my wishes. Nantion Aurora took the opportunity to flatter Zheng Dongsheng. How can it be called famous? It's just an undeserved reputation. Deputy Dean Nantion, you flatter me. Zheng Dongsheng laughed and asked, from what you said just now, could it be that you competed with the will of heaven for the position of Deputy Island Master 2 years ago? Yes, but I had just advanced to the mysterious Ascension early stage at that time. My strength had not yet stabilized, so I failed at the last moment. Nantion Aurora smiled bitterly. What about now? Since the will of heaven has gone to the East Continent, his position as Deputy Island Master has been vacated, right? Zheng Dongsheng turned to look at Wu Miao. As the Executive Deputy Island Master, Wu Miao had the most say in this matter. Nantion Aurora's eyes lit up when he heard this. The reason why he had visited Wu Miao today was because of this matter. If he could get some help from Wu Miao, he might be able to regain the opportunity to compete for the position of Deputy Island Master. Master Zheng is right. The Island Master Pavilion must have 1 Island Master and 4 Deputy Island Masters. This is a rule that has been passed down since ancient times. No one can make an exception. It would be fine if he only left for a month or 2, but this time, the will of heaven is going to the distant East Continent. Moreover, it is a dangerous mission to charge into the mysterious Ascension realm. Who knows if he can come back alive? Wu Miao sneered. He had never been on good terms with the will of heaven. Of course, he could not wait for the will of heaven to be struck to death by the lightning tribulation. Even if the lightning tribulation did not kill him, given the will of heaven's domineering personality, it would be easy for him to stir up trouble in the East Continent, where there were many experts. If he offended a powerful person, it would be hard for the will of heaven not to die. In other words, the Island Master Pavilion is missing one of the 5 Island Masters. Does that mean Deputy Dean Nantion has a chance? Zheng Dongsheng glanced at the restless Nantion Aurora with a smile. You can say that. After the Island Master Pavilion's discussion, the will of heaven's position as Deputy Island Master is temporarily vacant. If he can rush back to Middle Island in a short time, he will still have a chance. However, if he returns late and the position is taken by someone else, he will have nothing to say. This is a rare opportunity. Deputy Dean Nantion can indeed fight for the position. Wu Miao nodded. If I can fight for the position of Deputy Island Master, I will definitely follow Deputy Island Master Wu's lead. Nantion Aurora hurriedly expressed his loyalty. As the Executive Deputy Island Master, Wu Miao's authority in this matter was second only to the Island Master. She was the person he needed to win over the most. As long as Wu Miao was willing to agree, coupled with the power behind him, he would have at least a 70% chance of winning. As for the Island Master, who had more authority, Nantion Aurora had a say in this matter. It was a pity that the Island Master he had tried so hard to befriend happened to be in seclusion. Now, another powerful person was in charge of the Island Master's authority. Nantion Aurora couldn't even meet that powerful person, so he naturally couldn't do anything about it. Therefore, he placed all his hopes on Wu Miao. He never expected Zheng Dongsheng to support him when they first met. Furthermore, it seemed like Wu Miao was very obedient to Zheng Dongsheng. This was a pleasant surprise. Chapter 4984. Acting Deputy Island Lord. Nantian Aurora was stunned. That's right. After all, the will of heaven just left not long ago. If we give his position to someone else now, I'm afraid there will be criticism. However, it's reasonable if it's just the acting Deputy Island Lord. Wu Miao stroked her long beard with one hand and said confidently, "You are the Cultivator College's Deputy Dean and competed with the will of heaven for the position of Deputy Island Lord, so you are the best candidate. I believe the Island Lord Pavilion won't have any objections as long as I suggest it. Among them, only Chu Wentian is close to the will of heaven. However, he's gone, so I believe he won't be so stupid as to oppose me. I also asked someone to investigate privately. Chu Wentian and the will of heaven only seem to be on good terms, but they don't have a deep relationship. After all, they are both influential figures. It's impossible for him to offend the Executive Deputy Island Lord for the sake of the East Continent's the will of heaven, unless he's out of his mind." Nantian Aurora nodded. "Don't worry about the others. The only person who might object to this is the acting Island Lord, given his strength and background. If he says no, I'm afraid even I won't be able to help, Brother Nantian." Wu Miao frowned. After all, the acting Island Lord isn't the real Island Lord. Furthermore, he's new here, so I'm afraid he doesn't have as much authority as you, the Executive Deputy Island Lord. How can he have that much influence? Zheng Dongsheng couldn't help feeling puzzled. "Master Zheng, you might not know this, but even though he's the acting Island Lord, his strength and background are extraordinary. Vice Island Lords like us have no choice but to bow our heads and listen to him. To put it bluntly, the position of the Island Lord of Middle Island is very important to us, but that person doesn't necessarily care about it. He's just here to handle some errands. I don't think he'll agree to be the Island Lord of Middle Island for decades, or even centuries," said Wu Miao with a bitter smile. "Could he be someone from one of those super aristocratic families?" Zheng Dongsheng was shocked. "That's right, and he's a member of the Middle Island Elder Council. We don't dare to ask too much about him, but we do know that he's from a powerful family. Otherwise, why would they give him the position of acting Island Lord without even giving us a chance to discuss it?" Wu Miao shook her head. As the managing Vice Island Lord, he had the highest chance of becoming the acting Island Lord. However, no one expected such a ruthless person to appear out of nowhere. Wu Miao and the other Vice Island Lords didn't even have a chance to do anything and could only obey orders. If that's the case, then it really depends on luck. Since he's someone from a super family, even I might not be able to speak to him. Zheng Dongsheng shook his head and sighed, not to mention him, the number 2 pill refiner of the Morningstar Academy. Even the number 1 pill refiner, Qing Danzi, could not enter the eyes of the aristocratic families. What should we do? Nantian Aurora's heart sank. This was an extremely rare opportunity. He had to seize the position of Vice Island Lord while the will of heaven wasn't around. Otherwise, once the will of heaven returned, he would have nothing to do with it. Therefore, he was determined to get the position. Otherwise, why would he lower himself to fawn over Wu Miao? Brother Nantian, you don't have to be so worried. I'm just saying that there's a possibility, but in reality, the possibility isn't high. The high and mighty acting Island Lord took office alone and didn't bring any trusted aides with him, so he probably won't be interested in the position of Vice Island Lord. After considering all aspects, Brother Nantian is the most suitable candidate. He has no reason to object, so the position of Vice Island Lord is very likely to go to you, Wu Miao said with a smile. After Nantian Aurora became the Vice Island Lord, he would have one more person on his side in the Island Lord Pavilion. Naturally, his authority would be greater. After he got rid of the remnants of the will of heaven's forces, the Island Lord Pavilion would be under his control, apart from the high and mighty acting Island Lord. If he encountered a suitable opportunity, he might even be able to dream about the position of Island Lord. Haha, this is great news. Let's get a Vice Island Lord first. After a few months, The word Vice Island Lord will be removed. It seems like we can call him Vice Island Lord Nantian in advance, Zheng Dongsheng said with a smile. Thank you, Master Zheng and Vice Island Lord Wu, for your support. I can't thank you enough and will never forget it. Nantian Aurora was overjoyed. He was originally a little uncertain, but after listening to Wu Miao's analysis, he immediately felt much more assured. Brother Nantian, we'll all be on the same side in the future. There's no need to be so courteous. As long as we cooperate sincerely, Central Island will be ours sooner or later, Wu Miao said ambitiously. Great. Vice Island Lord Wu is indeed someone who's going to break through to the magnate stage. Your ambition and boldness are indeed extraordinary. Zheng Dongsheng praised. Then he said, however, capable people have more work. You can't just focus on Vice Dean Nantian. We still need you to deal with Tiandan Pavilion. That's easy. It's just Tiandan Pavilion. I can get it with just a word, but... Wu Miao suddenly paused. But what? Tong Yangsua asked hurriedly. I heard that Tiandan Pavilion is related to the Pill Hall. Is that true, Vice Hall Master Zheng? Wu Miao looked at Zheng Dongjue, who was silent. Ever since Zheng Dongjue arrived, apart from greeting them at the beginning, he hadn't said a word. No one knew if it was because of his position or if he was pretending to be profound. Zheng Dongjue nodded when he heard Wu Miao's question. It's true. Tiandan Pavilion's Tianchan is a disciple of my Pill Hall. Not only that, but she's also my granddaughter-in-law. However, my grandson died young, so we're a little estranged. Everyone fell silent, especially Tong Yangsua, who was extremely embarrassed. They were actually discussing how to deal with Zheng Dongjue's granddaughter-in-law in front of him. He was speechless and ashamed. No wonder Zheng Dongjue had been silent all this while. Everyone, please don't misunderstand. Actually, I don't object to your plan to deal with the Heavenly Dan Pavilion. Although Tianchan is the granddaughter-in-law of the Zheng clan, she has been entangled with Lin Yi. She should have been taught a lesson a long time ago. It's just that, as an elder, it's not appropriate for me to do it personally, Zheng Dongjue clarified. Zheng Dongjue was happy to see everyone plan to deal with Tiandan Pavilion. Previously, he didn't dare to force Tianchan too much because of the will of Heaven's deterrence. Now that the will of Heaven was gone and they destroyed Tiandan Pavilion, he could naturally summon Tianchan back to the Pill Hall. Zhang Tianchu had been bothering him about this for the past 2 years, so he had been thinking about it for a long time. Chapter 4985. It wasn't just Wu Miao. Nantian Aurora also had the same doubts. Even if Zheng Dongjue was Zheng Dongsheng's distant cousin, that was a completely different matter. Zheng Dongjue couldn't possibly be in cahoots with the medicine sect just because of Zheng Dongsheng, right? Hee. Deputy Island Master Wu is indeed clever. To be honest, although you're helping the medicine sect in name, you're actually helping me. Zheng Dongjue and Zheng Dongsheng looked at each other and smiled. What do you mean? Wu Miao and Nantian Aurora were still confused. When Tong Yangsua saw Zheng Dongjue shooting him a look, he hurriedly explained, people have been speculating and criticizing the behind-the-scenes owner of the medicine sect, but we've never responded to them directly. However, Deputy Island Master Wu and Deputy Dean Nantian aren't outsiders, so there's no need to hide it. The behind-the-scenes owner of the medicine sect is right in front of us. It's the Zheng family. There's actually such a thing. Wu Miao and Nantian Aurora were both shocked. This was quite a surprise. The Zheng family had a 7th-grade alchemist like Zheng Dongsheng and Zheng Dongjue, whose words carried enormous weight in the elixir hall. They didn't expect them to have a chamber of commerce as large as the medicine sect. They already had the shadow of a super aristocratic family. It's absolutely true. It's not good to announce this to the public, so I hope the two of you can keep this a secret for us. Zheng Dongjue nodded. Of course. Wu Miao and Nantian Aurora nodded repeatedly. It was no wonder that a mere medicine sect could hire a 7th-grade alchemist like Zheng Dongsheng and put in so much effort to deal with the Tiandan Pavilion. It turned out that the medicine sect was their own business. However, this made them even more determined to befriend Zheng Dongsheng and Zheng Dongjue. given the scale of the Zheng family. Even if it wasn't a true super aristocratic family, it was still a powerful external aid that could be of great use in the future. The medicine sect is very important to the Zheng family. We have to get rid of the Tiandan Pavilion. I'll leave it to you this time, Deputy Island Master Wu. Zheng Dongjue cupped his fists. Leave it to me. Wait for my good news. Wu Miao nodded happily. Wu Miao was a swift and decisive person. She immediately sent a message to the Island Lord's Pavilion and mobilized a team of guards from Middle Island to charge toward Tiandan Pavilion. The street was in an uproar once again. In just one day, Tiandan Pavilion had become the center of attention for the third time. The first 2 times were fine, but the third time, Middle Island's guards had been alerted. Even Executive Deputy Island Lord Wu Miao had to make an appearance. This matter was getting out of hand. Since Lin Yi had opened up the sale of 7th-grade pills, not only did he put 5 7th-grade Recover pills on display, but he also announced that he was accepting pre-orders for any type of 7th-grade pills. Therefore, Tiandan Pavilion was bursting with people. The small shop was packed to the brim with customers, and business was booming like never before. The shop couldn't handle so many customers at once. Not only did Sydney and Tian Chan personally attend to the business, but even Wei Shenjin was so busy that his feet barely touched the ground. As for Lin Yi, he went to the 5-element commerce to look for Kai Zhongyang. Firstly, he wanted to check on Kai Zhongyang and Ho Guanqi. Secondly, he wanted to borrow some workers from Kai Zhongyang to deal with emergencies. Otherwise, Sydney and the others would die of exhaustion if they only relied on them. In the end, while Lin Yi went to the 5-elements commerce to ask for reinforcements, Wu Miao and her men arrived at Tiandan Pavilion. Middle Island's guard were all at least nascent soul cultivators, so the customers in Tiandan Pavilion couldn't stop them at all. The moment Wu Miao gave the order, they entered the Tiandan Pavilion in a single file. "What are you doing?" Wei Shenjin turned pale with fright. Tian Chan and Sydney's expressions also changed. "The guards are handling a case. Unrelated people, get out." The captain of the guards shouted coldly. The guests squeezed into the Heavenly Dan Pavilion, all scrambled to escape. The Heavenly Dan Pavilion immediately became empty. Only Tian Chan and the other 2 were surrounded in the middle. "Handle a case? What case?" Tian Chan quickly calmed down. She ignored the captain of the guards and frowned at Wu Miao, who was standing at the entrance. Tiandan Pavilion has always been doing business honestly. What crime did we commit to deserve such treatment? Doing business honestly? Wu Miao smiled when she heard this. She slowly walked to the display shelf in the center and picked up the latest 5-grade, 7 great rejuvenating pills. She sneered. "Should I say that you are ignorant and fearless, or should I say that you are extremely bold? How dare you sell grade 7 pills in such a big way? What an eye-opener." "What do you mean? I'm just selling grade 7 pills. Is it illegal?" Tian Chan, Sydney, and Wei Shenjin exchanged glances. They were confused. Of course, it's not illegal to sell grade 7 pills. However, it's a heinous crime to sell pills smuggled from the East Continent. Wu Miao's voice suddenly turned stern. Tiandan Pavilion is smuggling and selling grade 7 pills. The evidence is conclusive. From today onwards, Tiandan Pavilion will be sealed. All the grade 7 pills will be confiscated and reported to the East Continent. The moment she finished speaking, the guards acknowledged the order and were about to chase Tian Chan and the other 2 out of Tiandan Pavilion. Tian Chan, Sydney, and Wei Shenjin instantly panicked. Unlike Lin Yi, they had never been to the East Continent, and unlike Wu Miao, who was the executive vice island lord, they were not familiar with the rules. They had never heard of pill smuggling and were at a loss for what to do. The 3 of them were quickly pushed out of Tiandan Pavilion. Tian Chan and Sydney watched helplessly as the guards took out the police tape. Anxious, they hurriedly rushed forward to block the guards. "What? How dare you defy the guards in broad daylight? Do you know what this means?" Wu Miao glanced at the 2 women arrogantly and said calmly, Obstructing the guards is equivalent to provoking the island lord. The guards have the right to kill you. Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't make a mistake. Tian-chan was not as flustered as before. She retorted calmly, I would like to ask, how can you prove that this is a pill from the East Continent? If you can't prove it, then you're baseless. Even if you're the guards, you should at least have a good reason. There are so many people watching. Wu Miao could not help admiring Tian-chan. Most people would have run as far away as possible when faced with such a situation. She did not expect Tian-chan to have the guts to argue with them. There were many onlookers present, and if he couldn't give a reasonable reason, there would be all kinds of conspiracy theories, which would inevitably damage his image as Deputy Island Master Wu. He was still preparing to compete for the position of Island Master in the future, so he couldn't let such a small matter affect the public opinion. Chapter 4986. A moment later, Zheng Dongsheng appeared in Tiandan Pavilion. He could not help being stunned when he received the 7 great rejuvenating pills from Wu Miao's hands. They were supreme-grade pills. Although supreme-grade pills were rare for 4th-grade and 5th-grade pills, they weren't that rare. However, these were grade 7 pills. Even Zheng Dongsheng had never refined a supreme-grade pill before. Didn't this mean that the pill master behind this was far more capable than Zheng Dongsheng? Could it be the work of a profound-grade pill master? Zheng Dongsheng muttered inwardly. However, after he sensed the pills, he was shocked to discover that they were clean. There was not a single trace of a divine sense imprint on them. How is it? Asked Wu Miao. There's no divine sense imprint on them. Zheng Dongsheng shook his head. There was no way he could lie about this. After all, these grade 7 great rejuvenating pills were confiscated as evidence. If Tiandan Pavilion made a fuss, they would have to get someone to examine them. There's no divine sense imprint? Wu Miao's expression changed. Wasn't this a slap to his face in front of everyone? If that's the case, there should be no reason to seal Tiandan Pavilion, right? Tian-chan and the others heaved a sigh of relief. Tiandan Pavilion was in great shape now. If it was sealed today, it would be a huge loss to them. On the contrary, high-grade medicinal pills sold through normal channels will never deliberately erase the divine sense imprint. Only those medicinal pills that cannot see the light of day will do so. So, you're being too clever for your own good. Zheng Dongsheng smiled coldly. You're slandering us. Tian-chan and the others flushed with anger. What's there to argue about? Get out of the way, or else we'll kill you, ordered Wu Miao. As soon as the order was given, a group of masters from the escort team quickly approached them. If Tian-chan and Shueli still did not give way, they would really kill them. Wei Shinjin hurriedly pulled the 2 girls aside and comforted them softly. They clearly came prepared. There's no use arguing with them. We can only wait for Boss Lin, Yi to come back and think of a solution. Where there's life, there's hope. Although Tian-chan and Sydney were unwilling, they were not blinded by anger. They could only stand aside and watch helplessly as the other party put the seal on the door of their Tiandan Pavilion. Retreat. Wu Miao and Zheng Dongsheng smiled at each other before they left with their men. Now that the Tiandan Pavilion had been sealed, there was no point in competing with Medicine Sect. TSK, Tiandan Pavilion is doomed. It wasn't easy for him to be so popular, but in the end, he was banned in less than half a day. How pitiful. The crowd nearby did not disperse. They were still whispering and pointing at each other. Yeah, who told it to offend the Medicine Sect? They even managed to get Wu Miao, the managing deputy island owner, to help them. Who else could Tiandan Pavilion ask for help? At the end of the day, they were still too weak. Their foundation was insufficient. The strong preyed on the weak. This was fate. This day will come sooner or later, someone said with a sigh. What a pity. Let's not talk about anything else, but the quality of their elixirs is guaranteed, and the price is reasonable. If it were a big shop like the Medicine Sect, the price would at least double, and it would be impossible to buy a top-grade medicinal pill, sigh. Someone sighed. Lin, he finally arrived at this moment, late to the scene. Behind him were two employees who were borrowed from Five Element Commerce for emergencies. When they saw the conspicuous seal on the Tiandan Pavilion's door, they could not help but be slightly stunned. "What's going on?" Lin Yi found Tian Chan and the others and asked. The people from the Island Lord Pavilion said, "Our 7th grade pills were smuggled from the East Continent, so they came to confiscate them. Even the 5 7th grade recover pills were taken away." Tian Chan and Sydney looked aggrieved. The person who just arrived is the managing deputy island owner, Wu Miao. However, the medicine sect must be behind this. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come to Tiandan Pavilion for no reason, added Wei Shinjin. Linny nodded and did not say anything. He walked to the door and tore the seal without hesitation in front of the crowd. He turned and said loudly, "Tiandan Pavilion will open for business as usual. If you need anything, you don't have to worry too much. You can come and visit as usual. Tiandan Pavilion will bear all the consequences." With that, he turned around and called out to Tian Chan and the others, smiling faintly. "What are you guys spacing out for? I've even brought reinforcements. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and get ready to open for business." Huh? Tian Chan and Sydney were stunned. They thought that Lin Yi would ask for help. Even though the will of heaven was not around, Kai Zhongyang, Ho Guanxi, and the others still had some connections in Middle Island. It would not be difficult for them to find a few big shots to help them. However, they did not expect that Lin Yi had no intention of doing that. Instead, he chose to ignore the seal. Boss, this is the seal from the Island Lord Pavilion. If we open for business without any regards, we will be in deep trouble. Wu Miao will definitely not let us off." Wei Shinjin hurriedly reminded them. Although it was bad that things had developed to this point, they had only sealed off the Tiandan Pavilion, so they would not be in any danger. However, if they openly disobeyed the Island Lord Pavilion's order, they might get killed. After all, from the standpoint of the medicine sect, they might not be willing to give up just because they had sealed up the Heavenly Pill Pavilion. This time, Lin Yi had publicly disobeyed the Island Lord's order, giving them an excuse to get rid of him. Just this reason alone was enough for Wu Miao to kill them all without hesitation. Lin Yi patted him on the shoulder and said faintly, "You're wrong. This time, it's not about whether they'll let us go or not. It's about whether I'll let them go or not. Just wait and see." Huh? Wei Shinjin was completely dumbfounded. Wu Miao was the executive vice island lord and the second in command of Middle Island. How could Lin Yi deal with someone like her? Although Lin Yi was ridiculously strong and could send a mid-stage, mysterious ascendant cultivator flying with a single kick, Wu Miao was different. Not only was he much stronger than Zhao Yuke, but he was also a troublesome figure. Zhao Yuke would not suffer any repercussions if he bullied him. However, if Lin Yi attacked Wu Miao, it would be equivalent to challenging the entire Island Lord Pavilion. The consequences would be unimaginable. Wei Shinjin wanted to remind them, but Lin Yi did not give him a chance. He had already left with Tian Chan, Sydney, and 2 helpers whom he had borrowed for emergencies. Chapter 4987. Wu Miao could only arrest Lin Yi and the others from Tiandan Pavilion. There was no way she could arrest the customers who were here to buy pills. Everyone knew that Tiandan Pavilion's pills were of high quality, which was why they wanted to buy as many pills as they could before Tiandan Pavilion was closed down again. If they missed this opportunity, it would be difficult for them to buy top-grade pills in the future. This is the last craze. Wei Shinjin sighed and broke out in cold sweat. However, he did not have the time to worry about it. If he did not hurry up and lend them a hand, Tian Chan and the others would not be able to handle the situation. The situation was too explosive. Even though Lin Yi had borrowed 2 employees, it was still far from enough. If the situation was not a flash in the pan, Tiandan Pavilion would have to start recruiting more people. Otherwise, they would really die of exhaustion. Unfortunately, this situation was destined to be a flash in the pan from the moment Lin Yi removed the seal. Less than an hour later, Wu Miao received the news and surrounded Tiandan Pavilion with her people again. "Unrelated people, leave immediately. Otherwise, we'll kill you." Wu Miao's eyelids twitched when she saw this. She had just left, and this situation had already happened. Did these people not take her, the Executive Vice Island Lord, seriously? If a tiger doesn't show its might, they'll think it's a sick cat. Tiandan Pavilion was in chaos again, and the place was quickly cleared out. However, since Lin Yi was around this time, Tianchan and Sydney did not panic as much as before. They believed that as long as Lin Yi was around, nothing would be a problem. According to our investigation, Tiandan Pavilion's Lin Yi, Tianchan, Sydney, and Wei Shenjin went against the law and violated the Island Lord's order. Their crimes cannot be forgiven. Men, arrest them, ordered Wu Miao coldly. Wei Shenjin panicked. If they were arrested and sent to Middle Island's prison, the four of them would never see the light of day again. Even if someone came to their rescue, given Wu Miao and medicine's sex methods, there was no way they wouldn't be able to do anything to Wu Miao. Unless they were powerful figures like the Will of Heaven, who could break into the prison, Wu Miao might secretly execute Kai Zhongyang and Hou Guanqi before they could even receive the news. Then, even if the Will of Heaven came back, he would not be able to do anything to Wu Miao. However, Lin Yi was not anxious at all. He glanced at the guards surrounding him nonchalantly before he looked at Wu Miao and sneered. "Are you sure you want to arrest me?" Of course. Not only did Tiandan Pavilion violate the agreement between Middle Island and East Continent by smuggling and selling high-class pills, but they also violated the Island Lord's order. Who else would I arrest if not you? Are you going to tell me that you are not from Tiandan Pavilion? Wu Miao looked down at Lin Yi and the others condescendingly. Of course I'm from the Heavenly Dan Pavilion. I created the Heavenly Dan Pavilion with my own hands. However, if you think you can catch me with just a few shrimp soldiers and crab generals, aren't you looking down on me too much? Lin, he didn't put the Middle Island guards in his eyes at all. It wasn't that he was arrogant. He was someone who could turn the East Continent's Yellow Steps Sea upside down. He was someone who could even defeat an early-stage mountain opening magnate realm expert. It was simply too much for him to take a group of nascent soul experts seriously. Things were very different from the last time he came to Middle Island. Back then, Lin Yi was weak, so he could only tremble in fear. However, after going through a series of trials, especially after his trip to East Continent, he had become a formidable figure in Middle Island. Even if he wasn't a local tyrant, there was no way he would be intimidated by Wu Miao, the Executive Deputy Island Lord. Are you trying to resist arrest? Wu Miao instantly smiled. For someone who could easily defeat a mid-stage Profound Ascension expert, a group of nascent soul experts from Middle Island's guards would not be much of a threat. However, if he resisted arrest in public, he would be sentenced to death. They wouldn't even need to pin the blame on Lin Yi. They could just kill him on the spot. Even if the nascent soul experts from Middle Island's guards could not take down Lin Yi, Wu Miao was a late-stage Profound Ascension expert. If she couldn't even deal with an early-stage Profound Ascension expert, how could she be the Executive Deputy Island Lord? She might as well kill herself with a piece of tofu. So what if I'm resisting arrest? Lin Yi looked at Wu Miao calmly. Then don't blame me for being merciless. I'm just doing my job. I didn't want to kill anyone. After all, we don't know each other. However, if you want to die, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Wu Miao's lips curled into a sinister smile. Even if I want to die, you need to have the ability to make me do it, right? Lin Yi chuckled and glanced at him. He said disdainfully, "Do you think you can rely on these dogs and cats? Or do you think you're the Executive Deputy Island Lord who's at the peak of the late-stage Profound Ascension expert? I'm afraid it's hard to say who's the one who wants to die. How arrogant. Since you want to die so badly, I'll fulfill your wish." Wu Miao was utterly infuriated by Lin Yi's tone. It would make sense if this was said by a powerful cultivator in the mountain opening stage. However, this kid was only at the early stage Profound Ascension. Even if he could fight someone above his cultivation level, how strong could he be? Could he be more powerful than a powerful cultivator in the mountain opening stage? If Wu Miao had seen what happened at Lei Dong Plain Island in the East Continent, he would not have been so indifferent. Come to think of it, he was right. Although Lin Yi was only at the early stage Profound Ascension, he was able to fight someone in the early stage mountain opening stage. As soon as she finished speaking, Wu Miao made her move. Under normal circumstances, even the guards of Mid-Island couldn't fight on the streets. After all, if things went out of control, the merchant groups and even the entirety of Mid-Island would suffer huge losses. However, Wu Miao was confident that she could kill Lin Yi in one move. Naturally, she wouldn't suffer any losses. Water and fire dual attributes? Lin Yi was slightly surprised when he sensed the fluctuations of the essential qi in Wu Miao's body. Logically speaking, it was very difficult to make a breakthrough with just the two attributes of water and fire. After all, water and fire were incompatible. To be able to perfectly fuse the water attribute and fire attribute together to form the water and fire attribute, without exception, was not a simple person. No wonder he was able to climb to the position of Deputy Island Master. This person was indeed not an ordinary person. It was rumored that the water and fire dual attributes were unpredictable. Even the same move would have countless variations, making it very difficult to deal with. In terms of strength, he was comparable to an ascending spirit cultivator. This kind of expert at the peak of the late-stage profound ascension stage was even comparable to a perfected profound ascension cultivator. In Middle Island, where profound ascension cultivators were rare, Wu Miao had the right to be arrogant. Chapter 4988. Not bad, but it's a pity that you realized it too late. Wu Miao sneered. Her water and fire energy transformed into a striped tiger. The aura of a ferocious tiger descending the mountains struck fear into the hearts of the onlookers. The guards hurriedly retreated. Given their strength, it would be fatal if they were caught in the crossfire. Wu Miao's fierce tiger descends the mountain wasn't the first time they had been injured or crippled. They had learned their lesson, so they had to stay as far away from Wu Miao as possible. A tiger? It looks pretty impressive, but I don't know if it can defeat my dragon. Lin Yi smiled calmly. He casually sent out a 5 elements 8 trigrams murderous aura. Accompanied by a deep dragon roar, the 8 trigrams golden dragon descended on the tiny Tiandan pavilion. It was as if it came from an ancient beast, and the striped tiger stumbled back in fear. Qi transformed into a god. Wu Miao's eyelids twitched in fear. As the executive vice island lord of Middle Island, he was much more knowledgeable than the average person. He immediately saw through the essence of the 8 trigrams golden dragon. Even a late-stage mountain opening expert like Chongming Gui was shocked by it, let alone a peak late-stage mysterious ascension cultivator like him. Although the colorful tiger he created looked lifelike, it was only a special transformation ability of the water and fire elements. To put it bluntly, it was just a true qi in the shape of a tiger. It couldn't even be considered as a form of true qi, let alone a higher realm of true qi. Wu Miao's technique could only scare a layman. At best, it was just a poor version of qi transformed into a god. Who would have thought that Li Gui would encounter Li Kui today? The striped tiger relied on Wu Miao's qi to maintain its movements. Wu Miao was the one who had been scared off. However, the 8 trigrams golden dragon Lin he had created was different. It already had the aura of a real spirit beast. Lin, he didn't need to control it at all. It could attack on its own. As the multicolored tiger retreated, the 8 trigrams flood dragon let out a dragon roar and pounced on it. With 2 dragon claws and a dragon tail, it easily tore the multicolored tiger into pieces. That wasn't the end of it. The 8 trigrams flood dragon wrapped itself around Wu Miao. Wu Miao nearly peed her pants when she heard the dragon's roar and sensed the ferocious beast's aura. A dignified, profound ascension late-stage master was entangled by the 8 trigrams Jiao dragon. No matter how hard he struggled, he could not move at all. At this time, the only outcome was to wait for death. This result was really shocking. The guards and onlookers outside looked at each other in dismay. They didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. They were afraid of being targeted by the 8 trigrams flood dragon that had appeared out of nowhere. Even someone like Wu Miao was powerless against it, let alone small fries like them. What do you think? How's my dragon? Lin, he walked up to Wu Miao and crossed his arms calmly. Since Lin hadn't developed the 5 elements, 8 trigrams killing aura for a long time, even he wasn't sure how powerful the 8 trigrams flood dragon was. The only time he had used it was when he fought Chong Mingue. However, the difference in their cultivation levels was too great, so the 8 trigrams flood dragon was easily destroyed as soon as it was released. It was hard to see its true power. However, Lenny could see some clues now. Judging from the 8 trigrams flood dragon's ability to easily crush Wu Miao, it should be able to easily deal with profound ascension experts in the perfected profound ascension realm. It should be able to go up against weaker early-stage mountain opening experts like Zhang Zili. In terms of lethality and explosive power, it might not be comparable to Lightning Burial. However, it didn't need to accumulate power and could be unleashed instantly. Moreover, it was very flexible. As long as Lin he was slightly distracted, he could work together with the 8 trigrams flood dragon to form a 2-on-1 fight. Lin he was secretly delighted by this conclusion. This was practically an advanced version of left and right mutual combat. If he had mastered this move when he fought Zhang Zili, he wouldn't have had to put in so much effort. He could have completely suppressed Zhang Zili, and he might not even have been able to fight back. Don't you dare. Ordinary people couldn't withstand the pressure of being surrounded by a ferocious beast. Wu Miao's voice was trembling, but she refused to back down in front of Lin Yi. She forced herself to remain calm and said, I am the Executive Vice Island Master, Wu Miao. If you dare to touch me, you will be making an enemy of the entire island. Think about the consequences. Really? I'm so scared. Lin, he didn't take Wu Miao's threat to heart. He pursed his lips and said, Is Middle Island owned by your family? Do you think you can do whatever you want? Since you've chosen to be a lackey of a medicine sect, you should have this awareness. Since you dare to deal with me, you should naturally be prepared to be dealt with by me. Don't you think so? Wu Miao was speechless. Now, she really regretted agreeing to help medicine sect. She thought they were just insignificant characters, but she turned out to be a tough opponent. She was only in the early-stage mysterious ascension realm, but she was able to defeat her, a late-stage mysterious ascension expert, easily. Furthermore, she had used the legendary technique of transforming qi into spirit. Wu Miao wasn't a fool. She knew what this meant, and she knew that a mere executive vice island master like her couldn't handle this. She had been tricked by the Zheng family this time. I'll spare your life this time. I'll give you half a day to bring back my 5-grade, 7 great recover pills. It's fine if you can't do it. I'll go to your place myself, but things won't be so easy then. Lenny looked at Wu Miao and said calmly, Remember, I don't have a good temper. I'll only let you go once. Wu Miao was so scared that she broke out in a cold sweat. She was elated to hear this. Although this person was scary, he didn't dare to provoke the Island Lord Pavilion. Otherwise, if he really became enemies with the entire island, what could he do? With that thought, Wu Miao's apprehension vanished. Her identity as the Executive Vice Island Master was her greatest protection. As long as Lin he didn't dare make an enemy out of Nakajima, she would be able to take him down for sure. After Lin he let go of the 8 trigrams dragon, Wu Miao immediately put on the airs of an Executive Vice Island Master. However, before he could say anything to save his face, Lin Yi slapped him without warning and sent him flying out of Tiandan Pavilion in front of everyone. Chapter 4989. Wu Miao was so ashamed that she wanted to die under everyone's gaze. She wanted to dig a hole and hide in it. She didn't dare to say anything else and hurriedly left with her guards. There was dead silence inside and outside of Tiandan Pavilion. Everyone looked at Lin Yi as if he was a monster. Diao Huanshan, who was in the late-stage nascent soul realm, came to cause trouble and was sent flying with a slap. Zhao Yuke, who was in the mid-stage mysterious ascension realm, came to cause trouble and was sent flying with a kick. Now, Wu Miao, who was in the late-stage mysterious ascension realm, was also sent flying with a slap. Where did this ruthless person come from? From the looks of it, he's going to be invincible on Middle Island. Even Wu Miao was defeated. Who else on Middle Island can be his match except the Island Lord? Someone whispered. Island Lord Pavilion. The only person who is more powerful than Wu Miao is probably the Island Lord. However, Middle Island is a place full of hidden talents. Setting aside the Island Lord Pavilion's elders, there are many hidden experts from the various sections. There should be quite a few people who are more powerful than Wu Miao. It's just that they usually don't show their faces, analyze someone. Let's not talk about those who don't show themselves. On the surface, this Lin Yi is definitely one of the top geniuses in our Middle Island. He came out of nowhere. Is he really from Dongzhou? Someone guessed. I don't think so. Why did I hear that Tiandan Pavilion is related to the North Island? Someone immediately retorted. The North Island? You must be joking. There are only a few experts on the North Island. I think the most famous one among the younger generation is called Gong Yang or something. I've never heard of anyone called Lin Yi. Someone sneered. Pretending to be knowledgeable when you don't know? That's the history of the North Island. Have you been to the North Island in the past 2 years? Let me tell you, the most powerful person among the younger generation on the North Island is Ramjia. However, the most famous person on the North Island in the past 2 years isn't Ramjia. Instead, it's someone from the secular world. His name is Lin Yi. A middle-aged man said with a twitch of his lips. Really? Is this Lin Yi really from the North Island? By the way, Boss Chui, how do you know so much? Everyone looked over. I don't know if this Lin Yi is the same Lin Yi, but I was sent to the North Island to build a branch in the past 2 years. Of course, I know everything about the North Island. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here, Boss Chui said with a smile. Everyone in the crowd was in awe of Lin Yi. No matter where an expert went, they would always be respected. However, Tian Chan, Sydney, and Wei Xinjin were all deeply worried and could not bring themselves to be happy. What if Wu Miao doesn't give up? Tian Chan and Sydney glanced at each other worriedly. Although Boss was scared shitless earlier, from what I know, Wu Miao has a gloomy personality. I don't think she'll hand over the grade 7 Great Rejuvenation pill obediently. She might even call for reinforcements. Wei Xinjin reminded them. Calling for reinforcements isn't a big deal. People who are kind will be bullied. Since they're already here, our only choice is to fight back. We can't give in at a time like this, not even a small step. Otherwise, they'll take a mile after we give them an inch, and Middle Island will no longer have a foothold. Lin, he shook his head. Actually, he could tell that Wu Miao wasn't someone who could be easily intimidated. The only reason he had done this was to prepare for his upcoming counterattack. If Wu Miao continued to provoke him, he could kill her without hesitation. Even the Island Lord wouldn't be able to do anything about it. After all, he had already given in to the Island Lord Pavilion. If Wu Miao provoked him again, he would be the one who didn't know what was good for him. According to the rules of the cultivation world, Lin Yi could forgive him for killing him. If the Island Lord Pavilion deemed him as Middle Island's mortal enemy because of this, it would be inexcusable. But what if he finds the Island Lord of Middle Island again? Wei Xinjin was still a little worried. The Island Lord of Middle Island? Lin Yi thought back carefully. Last time, when Tianxing and Nantian Aurora were fighting for the position of Vice Island Master, he had seen the Island Master of Middle Island from afar. Although he didn't see the other party make a move, he felt that this person's strength wasn't at an extreme level. At least the aura he released wasn't at a level that could shock the world. After his trip to the East Continent and meeting Zhuang Yifan, who was a late-stage Earth pioneering realm expert, Lin Yi's standards had become much higher. So what if the other party was the Island Lord of Middle Island? If he was as unreasonable as Wu Miao, Lin Yi could only use his fist to talk. Tian Chan and Sydney were not surprised by Lin Yi's nonchalant expression. However, Wei Xinjin could not help but smile bitterly. Not only was his boss powerful, but he was also ridiculously bold. If the next person to fight was the Island Lord of Middle Island, and he was as unreasonable as Wu Miao, they would be in big trouble. Perhaps the entire power structure of Middle Island would change because of Lin Yi. Unfortunately, this was not a good thing for Lin Yi. So what if he defeated the Island Lord of Middle Island? Although the strong ruled Middle Island, It was not so chaotic that whoever defeated the island lord could dominate Middle Island. This kind of situation would only happen in the chaotic waters of the South Continent. It would never happen in the orderly Middle Island. If that happened, there would only be one outcome for Lin Yi. He would be hunted down by all the sects in Middle Island. No matter how powerful Lin Yi was, could he go against the entire Middle Island? This was clearly unrealistic. However, if Lin Yi could not defeat the Island Lord of Middle Island, he would definitely not end up well. After thinking about it, Wei Shenjin felt the only thing he could rely on was the Island Lord of Middle Island's character. He hoped that the Island Lord was not in cahoots with Wu Miao and the others. Otherwise, there would be no way out of this predicament. Sigh. It would be great if Elder Master Tian was here. With him around, there would not be so many problems. Even if it really came to this, at least someone would step in and deal with it. Wei Shenjin sighed. Things are unpredictable. Since Elder Master Tian is not here, we can only rely on ourselves to overcome this crisis. There is no other choice. Lin Yi glanced at Wei Shenjin and patted him on the shoulder. You have worked hard for the past 2 years. However, this has nothing to do with you. You don't have to face it with us. Wei Shenjin was stunned. To be honest, I'm not confident that I can overcome this crisis. However, it doesn't matter if I fall out with Middle Island in the end. At most, I will give up on Tiandan Pavilion and take Tianchan and Sydney back to the North Island to seek refuge. No matter how powerful those people in Middle Island are, they won't dare to go to the North Island to catch me, right? Lin Yi smiled nonchalantly. Chapter 4990. In this way, even if he escaped back to North Island, he wouldn't be able to live in peace. Maybe Middle Island could make North Island his enemy. But now that he had learned something new, Middle Island's importance in Lin Yi's mind was getting weaker and weaker. On the contrary, North Island, who had always been mediocre, had a feeling that he was hiding his strength. At least North Island had Shanghai Tianhua, a name that could scare a lot of people in Dongzhou, which was full of masters. This, Wei Shenjin still didn't understand. You're different from us. The 3 of us aren't natives of Middle Island. It's not a problem for us to leave. At worst, we can wander around the world. But you can't. All your relatives and sect members are in Middle Island. You can't escape, so you can't follow us into this mess. If you can survive this storm, it won't be too late for you to come back and help me, Lin Yi said sincerely. Lin Yi never had the habit of tricking his own people. Since Wei Shenjin was his younger brother, and he had worked hard in the past 2 years, even if he didn't make any contributions, he naturally couldn't get him into trouble. Boss, what kind of person do you think I am? Wei Shenjin finally understood. His face turned red, and he said angrily, In your eyes, am I, Wei Shenjin, the kind of person who is greedy for life and afraid of death? This isn't called being greedy for life and afraid of death. A wise man won't make unnecessary sacrifices. You don't have to do this kind of meaningless stupid thing because of so-called loyalty. Lin Yi shook his head and sighed. Don't worry, I'm not testing you. I really hope that you can hide for a while. Even if you don't think about yourself, you have to think about your relatives and friends. Boss, I understand what you mean, but I actually don't have any relatives or friends in Middle Island, so you worry too much. No matter what, I won't leave. I won't leave even if you kill me. Wei Shenjin's expression was unprecedentedly serious and firm. Lin Yi was speechless. He could only look at Tianchan and Sydney helplessly. Indeed, he didn't want to implicate Wei Shenjin, but since Wei Shenjin said so, what else could he do? Wu Miao came back in the evening. With her previous experience, the guests in Tiandan Pavilion automatically left the moment they saw him enter. They crowded outside and fought for a good spot to watch the show. Half a day, you're very punctual. Lin Yi looked at him and extended his hand. Where's my level 7 recovery pill? Oomph. Do you really think our Island Lord Pavilion is a pushover? Wu Miao forced a disdainful expression on her swollen face. So you're saying that you haven't learned your lesson? Lin Yi narrowed his eyes. It's not important whether I have a good memory or not. What's important is that you have to learn from now on. Before Lin could make things difficult for her, Wu Miao turned to the person behind her and said respectfully, "Island Lord, Lin is the one who disrupted Middle Island's order. He did whatever he wanted just because he was powerful. Not only did he smuggle and sell East Continent's pills, but he also attacked his subordinates in public. He has no respect for Middle Island's authority. Island Lord, please punish him." As expected, it was Island Master Nakajima's turn to appear. Lin Yi, Tian Chan, and the others exchanged silent glances. Everyone's hearts skipped a beat when they saw a dignified, middle-aged man walking out from behind Wu Miao. As expected of the owner of Middle Island, just by standing there, he gave off an intimidating vibe. "You injured the executive vice, Island Lord, and violated Middle Island's rules. Do you know your crime?" asked the middle-aged man coldly. His gaze landed on Lin Yi, and Lin Yi's shoulders sank. The immense pressure far exceeded Lin Yi's expectations. Lin Yi's face turned pale with fright. This was completely different from what he had expected. The middle-aged man was no mountain opening stage cultivator. His aura alone was on par with Zhuang Yifan's. In fact, Lin Yi felt like the middle-aged man was on par with Shanghai Tianhua and Ning Shangling. Since when did the owner of Middle Island become so terrifying? He was not this powerful the last time he saw him. However, Lin Yi soon realized that something was amiss. The person in front of him was not the owner of Middle Island. However, Wu Miao clearly addressed him as the owner of Middle Island. Did someone else change their owner in the past 2 years? "Senior, are you the owner of Middle Island?" Lin Yi took a deep breath and asked respectfully. Judging from the aura, the middle-aged man might be even more powerful than Zhuang Yifan. If they fought, Lin Yi would not stand a chance of winning, and he would not even be able to escape. He could only pin his hopes on the middle-aged man's character. "My name is Okuda Zhou, and I'm the acting Island Lord of Middle Island. Since the official Island Lord is in seclusion, I'm temporarily acting as the Island Lord," said the dignified man. Acting Island Lord? Lin Yi was stunned. No wonder he was not the same person he had seen. However, why was the aura of this acting Island Lord so much more powerful than the official Island Lord? That did not make sense. However, Lin Yi naturally would not ask this question. He cupped his hands at Okuda Zhou and said, "Since I'm acting as the Island Lord, I would like to ask you something. Can you distort the truth and ignore justice just because you have power?" "What do you mean by that? Weren't you the one who injured Deputy Island Lord Wu?" Okuda Zhou narrowed his eyes, and the pressure on Lin Yi's shoulder intensified. It felt like it was going to crush him, and even Lin Yi found it difficult to breathe. This person's aura was so powerful. Lin Yi was secretly alarmed, but he maintained his composure. He said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "I was indeed the one who injured him, but I cannot accept the accusation that I challenged the rules of Middle Island. Unless Middle Island Lord is making trouble out of nothing, then I have nothing to say." Making trouble out of nothing? Okuda Zhou turned to glance at Wu Miao before he looked at Lin Yi with an unfathomable expression. "Why don't you tell me what you're making trouble out of nothing? If you're telling the truth, I'll give you justice." Lin Yi relaxed when he heard this. Although Okuda Zhou's aura was powerful, he did not seem to be in cahoots with Wu Miao. Furthermore, he did not use his status to force Lin Yi to submit. Instead, he gave Lin Yi a chance to explain himself. This was very rare. If it had been someone else, they would not have bothered to say anything. They would have just said that Lin Yi was the Island Lord and attacked him. Why would they listen to him? They would not have specifically pointed out that Lin Yi was the acting Island Lord and explained so much. Chapter 4991. If he's really making trouble out of nothing, then it's only right for you to kill him. Okuda nodded faintly. This was indeed the unspoken rule of Heaven Stage Island. For example, if you went to another sect and behaved atrociously, then they could justifiably kill you, and even retaliate against your sect was a matter of course. Of course, Lin Yi's words were a little overboard when it came to shops. After all, shops were open for business. They were completely different from sects, which were purely private territories. It was a little alarmist to apply the sex practices to shops, but the logic was similar. However, Okuda quickly added, "But as far as I know, Vice Island Master Wu isn't making trouble out of nothing. He brought his men to seal Tiandan Pavilion because your Tiandan Pavilion smuggled and sold 7th grade pills from the East Continent. According to the agreement between the East Continent and Middle Island, this is a serious crime." Lenny laughed when he heard that. Hee, this is a groundless accusation. Do you have any proof, Island Master Okuda? My surname is Okuda. Okuda frowned and corrected him. He then turned to look at Wu Miao. Vice Island Master Wu, since you're the one who exposed this matter, do you have any proof? Okuda? He was stunned. This was the first time he had heard of this surname. However, he found it strange when he first heard about Okuda. Now that he heard about this unpopular surname, he suddenly thought of someone else. This was the only family with such an unpopular surname, even in the 5 great heavenly islands. Could it be? Of course I have proof. Wu Miao sneered and jumped out. She was holding the 5 7th grade great rejuvenating pills confiscated from Tiandan Pavilion. She handed them to Okuda and said, "Island Master Okuda, these are the pills that Tiandan Pavilion is selling. They are 7th grade pills of the highest quality. If they weren't smuggled from the East Continent, where did they come from?" That's right. To be able to refine a 7th grade recover pill of such quality. Even if he isn't a profound grade alchemist, he must be one of the best 7th grade alchemists. Logically speaking, it's hard to find an alchemist of this level outside of the East Continent. Okuda nodded. He believed Wu Miao's words a lot when he saw the pills because it made perfect sense. Even so, Okuda didn't jump to a conclusion. Common sense was common sense, but he had seen many things that were beyond common sense. He was able to injure Wu Miao, who was in the late stage of the Profound Ascension realm, when he was only in the early stage of the Profound Ascension realm. That in itself was beyond common sense. Okuda Master is right, but there are exceptions to everything. It's hard to find a refiner like this outside of East Continent, but it doesn't mean that there aren't any. Grandmaster Zhang Liju isn't from East Continent, so even he can't make this pill? Linny asked. Grandmaster Zhang Liju is a publicly acknowledged elixir god. Naturally, it's a different story. Are you trying to say that these pills came from Grandmaster Zhang Liju? Wu Miao mocked. She smiled coldly. Let's not talk about whether or not you have the ability to get Grandmaster Zhang Liju's pills. From what I know, it's been a long time since Grandmaster Zhang Liju made pills in Nakajima. Even if you really have the ability, why don't you have his consciousness imprint on these pills? Even high-level refiners had consciousness imprints. It was impossible for an elixir god like Zhang Liju to not have one. His consciousness imprint was widely known. Even people like Okuda and Wu Miao, who weren't refiners, could tell. Of course, they didn't need to do so in this case. There was no imprint on the pills at all. First of all, I never said that these pills came from Grandmaster Zhang Liju. That's what you're thinking. Of course, there's nothing you can do about your low IQ. But you can eat some retarded pills. Perhaps you can fight poison with poison, He suggested with a serious face. Wu Miao's already swollen face contorted even more. How dare this guy mock her in front of Okuda? How dare he? She didn't know what retarded pills were, but she was sure that it wasn't anything good. He ignored her and continued. Second, these pills don't have any consciousness imprints on them. Vice Island Master Wu, which I of yours saw me smuggling them. Can't I make them myself? You? How is that possible? If you can make pills like this, would you still have your current identity? Wu Miao snorted. Then what identity should I have? I'd like to hear your opinion, Vice Island Master Wu, He asked. If you could make a level 7 Great Huan pill, you'd be the head refiner of East Continent's Huangji Academy. You wouldn't be running a small pill shop like this. Even if you're bluffing, can't you be a little more reliable? Do you really think you can fool me and Okuda with such a ridiculous lie? Wu Miao sneered. Okuda stood by the side without saying a word. However, it was clear from his suspicious gaze that his thoughts were similar to Wu Miao's. At the very least, the first half of Wu Miao's words sounded reasonable. However, Okuda didn't rule out the possibility of accidents, So he kept observing Lin Yi to see how Lin Yi would respond. You think it's ridiculous? Apart from the fact that you're short-sighted, there's nothing else you can say. Lin Yi glanced at him and sneered. Since you're willing to be a lackey for the medicine sect, you must have heard about me from Zhao UK, right? My identity is higher than you think. I already told you that I'm a master of Morningstar Academy's top pill refiner, Qing Danzi. Wu Miao sneered. Just as she was about to retort, Okuda suddenly said, Who can prove it? Lin Yi was delighted to hear that. The fact that Okuda asked this meant that he was seriously considering the possibility of what he said. At the very least, he wasn't like Wu Miao, who scoffed at his words. Okuda was reasonable, so it was no wonder he had such an imposing aura. It was easy for Lin Yi to prove this. He just needed to make another supreme grade 7th level great revitalizing pill, and he'd be able to prove everything. But it wasn't that simple. Chapter 4992. However, Lin Yi relied on the godly pesticide cauldron to refine pills. How could he let outsiders see it? Hence, this method was definitely not going to work. Lin Yi pondered for a moment before he suddenly said, I have an elder brother at Middle Island. His warship just happened to be coming from the East Continent. He should still be docked there. You can ask him. Since he's your elder brother, how can we trust his words? Who knows if he's helping you lie? Wu Miao questioned anxiously. However, Okuda ignored her. He was slightly stunned when he heard what Lin Yi said. Oh, what warship? My elder brother's name is Okuda Ba. Coincidentally, his name is similar to the owner of Okuda Island. I'm the honorary vice captain of this warship, so he knows everything I'm doing in the East Continent, replied Lin Yi. Since you're the vice captain of his warship, of course he'll speak up for you. In the end, he doesn't have any concrete evidence, so he can only rely on a fake witness to confuse us. Do you think the owner of Okuda Island will believe you so easily? Wu Miao snorted disdainfully. She turned to Okuda and said, The owner of Okuda Island can't find a reliable witness, but I have one. Zheng Dongsheng, a 7th grade pill refiner hired by the medicine sect, is the second best pill refiner in the Morningstar Academy. However, he has never heard of Lin Yi before. This kid's words are all nonsense. He can't be trusted. However, Okuda glared at him coldly. Even though he didn't seem to be leaning towards Lin Yi, he was suddenly very displeased with Lin Yi's behavior. He snorted, Put down the pills and get lost with me. As for whether he's telling the truth or not, I'll find out once I ask him. Wu Miao was dumbfounded. She looked at Okuda in shock. What was going on? Wasn't this acting island master here to stand up for him? Why did he suddenly turn to Lin Yi? This brat had already clearly said that the captain had a close relationship with him. How could this kind of witness be trusted? Wu Miao's face turned bright red, but she didn't dare to question Okuda's words. Although she was the executive deputy island master, and the other party was only the acting island master, the other party was a big shot from Super Family. Whether it was in terms of strength or background, the other party was many times more powerful than her. Wu Miao didn't dare to question the other party to her face. Wu Miao wanted nothing more than to dig a hole in the ground and hide in the face of Lin Yi's smirk. However, he had no choice but to force himself to return the pill to Lin Yi in the face of Okuda's imposing aura. Luckily, he was thick-skinned. Most people would have covered their faces and fled long ago. Lin Yi took the pill and handed it to Tian-chan. He purposely said, Check to see if these are the 5 pills we gave you. If someone is unscrupulous and replace them with ordinary grade 7 great rejuvenating pills, we will suffer a huge loss. Wu Miao nearly vomited a mouthful of blood. If looks could kill, Lin Yi would have died 100 times by now. However, Okuda was standing right behind her. Unless Lin Yi agreed to inspect the pills, Wu Miao had no choice but to stay here. Otherwise, if Lin Yi turned around and made a false accusation, he would never be able to clear his name. But if it wasn't for Okuda's words, he would have kept the 5 level 7 great Huan pills for himself after this whole thing was over. After all, they were of the highest quality and couldn't be bought on the market. Lin Yi's words weren't wrong, but he didn't have the chance to do so yet. Finally, Tian-chan pretended to inspect the pills for a long time under the onlookers' watchful eyes. Wu Miao was on the verge of breaking down when he finally nodded and accepted the pills. Wu Miao felt as if he had been pardoned. He did not even wait for Okuda and hurriedly covered his face and fled. He was utterly humiliated as the executive vice island lord today. Linny must die. Wu Miao's murderous intent surged as he fled. He had no intention of taking Lin Yi's life, but he had humiliated him so much this time. In his rage, he was determined to kill Lin Yi. In contrast, the acting island lord, Okuda, had no intention of going back with him. He glanced meaningfully at Lin Yi before he left the Tiandan Pavilion and headed straight for the docks on Middle Island. Arriving at the Middle Island pier, Okuda saw the ancient warship at a glance. It was impossible for such a behemoth to not attract attention when it appeared on Middle Island. After all, even the largest treasure ship on the side was several times smaller in front of it. It was an existence on a completely different level. It's really him. Okuda was delighted when he saw the special symbol on the warship's mast. He landed on the deck of the warship in a flash. Who's there? The crew members looked as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Since they docked on Middle Island without prior notice, Okuda had ordered his men to shut down all the formations to avoid any misunderstandings. Otherwise, they would be in big trouble if they accidentally fired their weapons. However, no one had expected that someone would dare to jump on the ancient warship without prior notice. Did he think that this was a cruise ship for sightseeing? In a short while, the crew members surrounded Okuda. No one who could stand firm on the ancient warship was a weakling. Most of them were experts that Okuda had recruited from the East Continent. If they went all out, they could even fight against those sections. With these people around, even if the ancient warship had shut down its formations, it would still be difficult to deal with. However, after they surrounded Okuda, none of them dared to act rashly. This person's imposing aura was simply too powerful. It was so powerful that they found it hard to breathe, let alone act rashly. Everyone disperse. Even if all of you attack him together, you won't be a match for him. Don't go and die. Okuda's voice suddenly rang out from behind them. Third brother. Sure enough, it's you. How'd you been all these years? Okuda's expressionless face suddenly had a hint of excitement. Third brother? The crew members were stunned. They looked back and forth between Okuda and Okuda with a strange gaze. Now that they looked at each other, they really did look a little alike. Go, go, go. Go, 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 go. Do what you need to do. Are you looking for trouble by standing here? Okuda scolded everyone and then looked at Okuda with a wry smile. Second brother, how did you know that I'm here? He had told Lin Yi that he would soon leave Middle Island. The reason was that he really didn't want to have any contact with Okuda's family members. He didn't expect that Okuda would still come looking for him. Chapter 4993. Brother Lin Yi. Okuda was stunned. He thought that it was his ancient warship that caused a commotion, which alerted his second brother, who was the acting island owner. He did not expect that it was because of Lin Yi. Yes, it seems that he did not lie. If not for him, I wouldn't have been able to see you. Okuda Zhou laughed. Lie? Why would I lie about this? Okuda did not react for a moment, but then he thought that he had figured out the whole story. He slapped his thigh and said, How could I forget about this? With Brother Lin Yi's social circle, he would be personally received by President Zhuang of the Golden Step School Alliance in the East Continent. Since he has come to the Middle Island, it's naturally your turn to host a banquet. In the past few days, Okuda had found out that his second brother, Okuda Zhou, was the acting island owner, so he prepared to slip away as soon as possible. What? This time, it was Okuda Zhou's turn to be stunned. He could not help but exclaim, that Lin Yi actually has such a background and power in the East Continent that he needs Zhuang Yifan to personally receive him? Although in terms of strength, Okuda Zhou did not put Zhuang Yifan in his eyes. Zhuang Yifan was still one of the leading figures in the East Continent. He was the first official of the Golden Step Sea Alliance in the East Continent. It was rare for someone of such status to receive him personally. In particular, Lin Yi's strength was only at the early mysterious ascension realm, while Zhuang Yifan was at the late earth opening realm. With such a huge difference in strength, he was still on par with Zhuang Yifan. This meant that Lin Yi must have the ability to make up for this gap in other aspects, and that was alchemy. Just from Okuda Ba's words, Okuda Zhou could roughly confirm that Lin Yi said that he was the master, the chief alchemist of the Morning Star Academy, Qing Danzi. Although this sounded exaggerated, it was probably true. Brother Lin, he does not have a particularly strong background in the East Continent. His background should be in the North and West Islands. As for why he can do well in the East Continent, it is because of his alchemy ability. Second brother, you see that he is young, but he is a mystic level 1 alchemist. Okuda Ba smiled with pride. Mystic rank, first level alchemist? No wonder he was able to refine a 7th grade grand revitalizing pill. No wonder he was able to become Qing Danzi's master. I didn't expect him to be such a great character. Okuda Asha couldn't help but sigh. Although he was impressed by Lin Yi's ability to challenge those of a higher level, but after all, the difference between their realms was too big. In this aspect, he only saw Lin Yi as a young junior who had more potential. But such a young mystic level 1 alchemist, his status was completely different. This was an existence that no one dared to approach in the East Continent's Mystic Sea region. Any mystic grade first level alchemist would undoubtedly be treated as a VIP if he went to any heaven grade island outside of the Eastern Continent. Even Middle Island was no exception. Of course, Okuda Ba said as he glared at his subordinates. It was inappropriate for the two brothers to continue chatting on the deck, so he could only suggest, although this is Middle Island, since second brother has come to my warship, then you're a guest. I'll arrange a banquet. Let's talk while we eat? Okay, let's talk while we eat. Ever since third brother ran away from home, we haven't had a good meal together for a long time. Okuda Ashu readily agreed. As soon as he heard the word, ran away from home, Okuda Ba's face suddenly became a little awkward. He could only laugh a few times and invited Okuda Ashu into the captain's exclusive private banquet hall. When the dishes and wine were served, Okuda Ashu and Okuda Ba reunited after a long time. They exchanged greetings and drank a few glasses of wine. The originally estranged relationship gradually became harmonious. After all, there was no estrangement between the two brothers. It was just that Okuda Ba's relationship with his family was a little tense. Third brother, since that Lin Yi is a mystic first-level alchemist, then how did he become your honorary vice captain? Are you using this to rope in a mystic first-level alchemist? Okuda Asha's attention was still on Lin. Second brother, you're an amateur. I'm a captain who roams the seas. Why would I spend so much effort to rope in an alchemist? Even if he's a mystic first-level alchemist, it's not beneficial to my warship at all. He's not even as useful as an ordinary array master. Okuda Ba said disapprovingly. Then why are you still brothers with him? And even let him be your honorary vice captain? Okuda Ashu asked curiously. This is a long story. When I tried to rope him in, I only heard that his alchemy ability was not bad. I didn't even know that he was a mystic first-level alchemist. Okuda Ba shook his head and then laughed. Second brother, you should know that I'm a person with high standards. Ordinary people can't enter my eyes, but this brother Lin Yi is definitely not ordinary. Oh, other than being able to challenge higher levels and being a mystic first-level alchemist, does he have something special? Okuda Ashu asked curiously. Although these two things were already very exaggerated in the eyes of ordinary people, it was obviously not in this aspect that Okuda Ba was interested in. He's the most talented navigator I've ever seen. Okuda Ba's eyes lit up. Seeing that Okuda Ashu was still confused, he said, Second brother, have you heard of sea dragons? Of course. How could I not have heard of the existence closest to the king of the sea? Okuda Ashu paused and suddenly said in surprise, Third brother, you're not going to tell me that you met a sea dragon, are you? That's right. At that time, I was carrying the students of two academies in the East Continent from the West Island. In the end, I was attacked by a group of super sea beasts. There were 5 mountain opening stage sea beasts and countless mystic ascending and nascent soul stage sea beasts. The scariest thing was the mastermind behind this group of sea beasts. Every time Okuda talked about this, his eyes lit up with excitement. After all, this was the first time in his 300 years in the sea. For a man like him who was determined to conquer the endless sea, it was hard not to be excited. It's really a sea dragon? This time, even Okuda Zhou's voice changed. Chapter 4994. According to what you said, this Lin E is really unusual. Osamu took a deep breath. Although he didn't want Okuda to roam the sea all year round, he knew very well what Lin Yi's ability represented. Using the title of honorary vice captain to rope in such a person was definitely a good deal. It's a shame that this brother of mine is just too much of a genius. He has too many different abilities, and he doesn't have the heart to travel in the ocean. How great would it be if he didn't know how to concoct pills and only knew how to sail? What a waste. Okuda sighed. Recklessly wasting natural resources? Osamu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He pointed at Osamu and scolded. An early-stage Profound Ascension cultivator could easily deal with a peak late-stage Profound Ascension cultivator, and he's also a profound first-level alchemist. If he went sailing with you, it would really be a waste. The sea is where a man belongs. How is it a waste? Osamu wasn't convinced. I haven't seen you for so many years, and you're still like this. You've been like this since you were young. You're obviously more talented than me, but you've only liked to go on adventures since you were young. You've never been willing to cultivate properly. For this, you didn't even hesitate to fall out with your family, and in the end, you ran away from home. Osamu couldn't help but shake his head and smile bitterly. Our Okuda family is one of the few super families on Heaven Stage Island, but in the end, we have a third young master who doesn't do proper work. I really don't know what to say. Second brother, why are you talking about this? Osamu's face suddenly darkened. After running away from home, although he relied on his own strength to make a name for himself, he still couldn't get his father's approval. Other than his second brother, Osamu, everyone in the Okuda family always looked at him with a look of disdain. As time passed, he didn't want to have any contact with his family anymore. Third brother, I know you don't want to hear this, but as your second brother, I have to say it. Although father doesn't want to forgive you, he wants you to go back more than anyone else. You should know that your room is still in the ancestral home, and it's still the same as before you left. No matter who goes in and messes with it, father will be angry. Okuda sighed. Hearing this, Okuda fell silent. Sometimes, after drifting in the endless sea for a long time, he would occasionally have the urge to return to his family, but every time, he would quickly kill that urge. One day, he would rely on his own strength to achieve great things that would make his father sit up and take notice of him. This was the belief he had set since the day he ran away from home, and it had never changed. No matter what, you're still the third young master of the Okuda family. Since you've come to Nakajima, go back and take a look, Okuda said expectantly. Second brother, it's not like you don't know my ambition. Don't try to persuade me anymore. I'm going out to sea tomorrow. Let's get drunk tonight. Okuda shook his head. But Okuda Zhou still wanted to persuade him. Okuda waved his hand and interrupted him, saying with a heroic smile, Second brother, do you know what I'm going to do now? Just a warship is not enough to satisfy my appetite. I want to become the commander of a fleet that can sweep through Heaven Stage Island, not just a simple captain. You want to build a fleet? Okuda Zhou was startled by his crazy idea. Treasure ships were rare enough, and ancient warships were even rarer. Even with the Okuda family's foundation, they wouldn't dare to boast like this. Okuda goal was really ambitious. That's right. This is my goal. When I succeed, I will naturally return home. Okuda nodded. Seeing the unshakable determination in his eyes, Okuda Zhou hesitated for a moment, but in the end, he didn't try to persuade him anymore. He nodded and said, I'll wait for the day you return home. Just you wait. Okuda laughed, and suddenly changed the topic, right from what second brother said just now. Did Brother Lin run into some trouble? And you can say that, but it's just a small problem. Just say the word, and I will deal with it. Okuda Zhou nodded. Second brother, I have to remind you that this kid is not a small matter. Even from the perspective of the family, he is worth befriending. Do not rashly become enemies with him. Okuda Ba said in a serious tone. Don't worry, I know what's important. Okuda Zhou nodded. No matter what, Okuda Ba was a descendant of the Okuda family. Moreover, he had roamed the seas for 300 years, so his vision was naturally good. Since even he respected such a character, he naturally had to befriend him. The two brothers reunited after a long time. They drank from dawn to dusk, and then from dusk to dawn. Only then did Okuda Ba send Okuda Zhou off in a drunken state. The wine they drank was 100-year-old wine made from supreme-grade spiritual herbs, so the after effects were unimaginably strong. Fortunately, they cheated and dissolved most of the alcohol. Otherwise, even 10 Okudas would have passed out. In comparison, Okuda Zhou was more relaxed when he left. He was much stronger than Okuda Ba, so even if he did not cheat, he could easily dissolve the alcohol by circulating his essential qi in his body. He was the true definition of being able to drink 1,000 cups without getting drunk. Ever since Wu Miao came back from the Tiandan Pavilion yesterday, he had been guarding the Island Lord's Pavilion. He wished he could get someone to throw Lin Yi in jail and torture him. Unfortunately, he could only fantasize about it. Putting aside the fact that he did not have the strength to do so, even if he found someone who could deal with Lin Yi, he did not dare to act rashly before Okuda Zhou came to a conclusion. After all, it was not a big deal to offend Lin Yi. However, if he offended Okuda Zhou, his days would come to an end. Wu Miao paced back and forth in Hall 2, the Executive Vice Island Lord's personal residence. From time to time, he would send someone to Hall 1 to gather information. Okuda Zhou's attitude the day before made him feel uneasy. Although he did not think Okuda Zhou would offend him, an Executive Vice Island Lord, for an outsider like Lin Yi, what if he did? Since Okuda hadn't returned all night, Wu Miao had been on tenterhooks the entire night. When her subordinate told her that Okuda was back in the morning, Wu Miao couldn't wait to go and ask him about it. However, before he could leave Hall 2, Wu Miao turned back. If he went to Okuda Zhou and asked him about it, wouldn't it make it seem like he was eager to deal with Lin Yi? Although Wu Miao did have this thought, he could not make it so obvious since he was the second in command. Otherwise, Okuda Zhou would definitely look down on him. After thinking about it, Wu Miao sent one of his trusted subordinates to gather information. In the end, he came back in less than 15 minutes with a document from the Island Lord. How did it go? Asked Wu Miao hurriedly. Chapter 4995. You want me to read it personally? Wu Miao was slightly stunned and did not notice the strange expression on his trusted aide's face. She was secretly delighted. Although Okuda was a descendant of a powerful family, he knew how to conduct himself. He knew that Wu Miao had lost face at Tiandan Pavilion yesterday, so he was giving her a chance to get back at him. However, Wu Miao's expression instantly changed when he opened the document. It was hard to imagine that one person could have so many expressions on his face at the same time. His face was so ugly that it looked like a giant dye vat. According to our investigation, the pills from Tiandan Pavilion were not smuggled. They came from outside East Continent through normal channels. With immediate effect, Tiandan Pavilion's reputation will be restored. Executive Vice Island Lord Wu Miao will solemnly apologize for his previous misjudgment. Wu Miao was speechless for a long time as she read the island owner's letter. What happened at the Heavenly Pill Pavilion yesterday already made her feel humiliated, but now the island owner's letter was like a slap to her face. Okuda had specifically asked her to read it at the Heavenly Pill Pavilion. Even if they wanted to slap her, they couldn't be so merciless. Isn't he just an acting island lord? How dare he? Wu Miao cursed after dismissing his trusted aide. Of course, he only dared to curse in private. He did not even dare to voice his complaints in front of his trusted aide. let alone in front of Okuda himself. Not only did Wu Miao not dare to scold him to his face, but she didn't even have the courage to go to Okuda to argue with him. She was a high-ranking official, and this high-ranking official had a powerful background. What could he do even if he gritted his teeth in anger? Although Wu Miao did not dare to argue with Okuda, he could not resign himself to his fate. Going to Tiandan Pavilion to read the document was worse than death. There was no way he would do that. After thinking about it, he only had one choice. He went to Medicine Sect to look for Zheng Dongsheng. Vice Island Lord Wu. How did it go? Asked Zheng Dongsheng. Apart from him, Zheng Dongjue, Southern Sky Aurora, and Tan Yangsua were also present. These people were all jackals of the same tribe. Now that they had banded together because of their own interests, they naturally had to strike while the iron was hot and build up their relationship. They had to take this opportunity to understand each other's background clearly. Otherwise, how could they work together in the future with confidence? Wu Miao couldn't help blushing. He had confidently said that it would be a small matter, but things had turned out this way. Not only had he been humiliated by Lin Yi in front of everyone, but Okuda had also forced him into a corner. He was too ashamed to face Zheng Dongsheng and the others. However, he had no other choice. He had to come. If he told the truth, at least everyone could think of a solution. If he just gave up, not only would he lose face, he would also have to complain in front of Zheng Dongsheng and the others. The loss would really be immeasurable. He was still counting on Zheng Dongsheng to help him concoct pills. Wu Miao hesitated a little in embarrassment. In the end, she bit the bullet and said, Tiandan Pavilion is unfathomable. Unfathomable? Zheng Dongsheng and the others were stunned. They had sent people to keep an eye on Tiandan Pavilion, so they knew what had happened yesterday. Rather than saying Tiandan Pavilion was unfathomable, it would be more accurate to say that Lin Yi was unfathomable. An early-stage profound ascension expert that even Wu Miao couldn't defeat was truly shocking. Even with Deputy Island Lord Wu's connections, you can't find an expert who can defeat Lin Yi. Zheng Dongjue couldn't help but feel a little strange. He looked at Wu Miao meaningfully and said, based on what I know, even if the Island Lord Pavilion doesn't alert the Middle Island elders, they shouldn't be unable to deal with Lin Yi, right? Zheng Dongsheng and the others also looked at Lin Yi suspiciously. The current Lin Yi was indeed unstoppable, but it was absolutely impossible to say that even the Island Lord Pavilion was helpless. Even if the official strength of Middle Island wasn't as outstanding as the other Sky Islands, it wasn't weak to this extent. Of course, the Island Lord Pavilion can deal with Lin Yi. The problem is that the acting Island Lord must have gone crazy. He was supposed to stand up for me, but after he arrived at Tiandan Pavilion, he asked me to return the pills and said that he would personally investigate the matter. Then, he gave me this today. Wu Miao handed the document to Zheng Dongsheng and the others with a bitter expression. They looked at each other in dismay. Zheng Dongsheng couldn't help frowning. Didn't you say that the acting Island Lord is from a super aristocratic family? He shouldn't have anything to do with Tiandan Pavilion, right? Why is he so biased? I don't know the specifics, but I think he went to see one of Lin Yi's older brothers. After he came back, he didn't say anything. Instead, he gave me this document. Wu Miao smiled helplessly. Went to see Lin Yi's older brother? Isn't he clearly biased? Zheng Dongsheng and the others frowned even more. That's right. That's why I have no choice but to discuss this with you and see if you can come up with a proper solution. I can only delay this document for half a day at most. If I can't come up with a solution, I, as the Executive Vice Island Lord, will have no choice but to follow orders. If that happens, there will be no turning back. Wu Miao sighed. In order to maintain their prestige, the Island Master Pavilion's actions were most taboo to change their orders constantly. Once this Island Master's document was announced, it had already been changed once. From then on, it had become a final conclusion. Even if this matter was sealed in the coffin, it could no longer be changed. Zheng Dongsheng and the others fell silent. They looked at each other in confusion. Although they were all shrewd people, they couldn't think of a solution. At the end of the day, they didn't have any solid evidence to prove that Tiandan Pavilion was smuggling pills. The fact that they didn't have a divine sense imprint could only be used as an inference. If they investigated further, it wouldn't hold water. After remaining silent for a long time, Zheng Dongsheng finally said, Tiandan Pavilion is a huge threat to medicine sect. It's not a big deal to take a step back, but if they take advantage of this opportunity, they will suffer. The consequences will be unimaginable. We have to kill them this time. But this is Island Lord Okuda's will. Even I can't disobey him. Wu Miao shook her head helplessly. Since the root of the problem lies with Island Lord Okuda, I can only go to the Island Lord Pavilion personally and talk to him, said Zheng Dongsheng in a deep voice. Although the other party's strength and background left him in the dust, he was still a 7th grade pill refiner from the East Continent. No matter where he went, he had some status. Even if he went to the Island Lord Pavilion in Middle Island, he would be treated as a VIP. Chapter 4996. Since Zheng Dongsheng and Wu Miao said so, Zheng Dongjue, Nantian Aurora, and Tong Yangsuo had no objections. None of them had the right to reason with Okuda, so Zheng Dongsheng was the only one who could. Zheng Dongsheng went to the Island Lord Pavilion with Wu Miao. He went straight to Hall 1 and found Okuda. May I know why you're here, Master Zheng? Okuda gestured for them to take a seat. If it was his original identity, he wouldn't have to be so polite to a 7th grade pill refiner. He would have been more like a black grade pill refiner, but he was the acting Island Lord now, so he couldn't mistreat his guests. Island Lord Okuda, I know quite a bit about what happened at Tiandan Pavilion. I heard that you believe that the 7th grade pills at Tiandan Pavilion came from legal sources? Zheng Dongsheng went straight to the point. That's right. That's true. Okuda glanced at Wu Miao and nodded calmly. Island Lord Okuda, do you have any evidence? Asked Zheng Dongsheng. Evidence? Okuda suddenly smiled. He asked instead of answering the question, Master Zheng, are you trying to say that the pills at Tiandan Pavilion came from the East Continent? Do you have any evidence? I can only prove someone's guilt with evidence. On the other hand, if someone is innocent, I don't need an innocent person to prove his innocence. I have tested the 5 7th grade Great Recovery pills at Tiandan Pavilion. They're all supreme grade pills, so it's very unlikely that they came from other heaven grade islands. It can only come from the East Continent. Furthermore, the pills don't have any divine sense imprints on them. That's the best evidence. Even if it's not solid evidence, you can come to a conclusion based on common sense, right? Zheng Dongsheng said confidently. You want to convict someone based on common sense? Master Zheng, do you think I'm that naive? My island has always been a gathering place for large chambers of commerce. If I'm the first to do something like this, won't all the other chambers of commerce have to close down? There are many things in this world that can't be explained with common sense. Master Zheng, you don't have to make a fuss about it, retorted Okuda calmly. Make a fuss about it? When Zheng Dongsheng heard this, his face suddenly became a little ugly. He looked straight at Okuda and said, with such conclusive evidence, Island Master Okuda actually thinks that I'm making a fuss over nothing. Originally, I came to Middle Island from afar, and, as a guest, I shouldn't meddle in this kind of business. However, the Tiandan Pavilion's Lin, he claimed to be the master of my Morning Star Academy's chief alchemist, Qing Danzi, so I can't stay out of this matter. I hope that Island Master Okuda can handle this matter impartially and not play favoritism. Is Master Zheng threatening me? Okuda didn't show any signs of anger, but after he said that, the atmosphere in the hall suddenly became solemn. The omnipresent, dignified aura pressed down on Zheng Dongsheng and Wu Miao, and they suddenly couldn't sit still. However, Zheng Dongsheng wasn't an ordinary person. Although he felt uncomfortable under the pressure, he forcefully endured it and said with an ugly expression, Island Master Okuda, please don't misunderstand me. I'm just speaking out of fairness. I don't mean to threaten you at all. However, this matter concerns the reputation of my Morningstar Academy. If Island Master Okuda can't clarify this matter, I can only report it to the East Continent and ask the East Continent Academy to punish Middle Island. Saying this, it was a complete threat, and it was a direct threat to the entire Middle Island. The sanction that Zheng Dongxing mentioned was not a joke. It was related to the disciple quota that the East Continent College allocated to Nakajima. Even if Okuda came from a super aristocratic family, they still had to send their disciples to the East Continent for further studies. Once they were really sanctioned by the East Continent, his family in Nakajima would suffer a huge loss. No one could afford this result, and Okuda was no exception. If he hadn't met his third brother, Okuda might have hesitated when faced with Zheng Dongxing's threat. However, now that he knew how powerful Lin Yi was, his words were like a joke to him. "Who are you reporting to?" Okuda asked indifferently. "The Morningstar Academy, of course. I'll report it to the East Continent's Golden Step Academy Alliance. If Middle Island doesn't do anything about this matter, which is obviously ruining the reputation of our academy, I believe its sanctions will be unavoidable. I hope Island Master Okuda won't make a mistake," Zheng Dongxing said with a smug expression. Originally, he didn't dare to say this, but since he had brought up the East Continent's name, he naturally felt superior to Middle Island. So what if Okuda was from the East Continent? He still had to act according to the East Continent Academy's wishes. "All right, you can go now." Okuda immediately raised his glass to send him off. Zheng Dongxing was dumbfounded. For a moment, he thought he had misheard. It wasn't until he saw Wu Miao's expression that he confirmed that he hadn't misheard Okuda. Did he take the wrong medicine? Why didn't Okuda listen to him? Zheng Dongxing looked at Okuda in disbelief. Usually, he would use this to threaten the people of the Heaven Stage Island, and it had always worked. How come this guy didn't seem to care at all? Could it be that the super aristocratic families were so powerful that they didn't even put the East Continent Academy in their eyes? What? Do the two of you want to stay for a cup of tea? Okuda looked at them with an ambiguous smile. Wu Miao's head was about to sink into her pants. If she had known that Zheng Dongxing was so unreasonable, she wouldn't have dared to come with him. Now, not only did Okuda not listen to him, but he even blacklisted her. She wouldn't have a good time in the Island Lord Pavilion in the future. "Master Okuda, I've already made myself very clear. We've never met before, and we have no grudges against each other. Why do you have to put yourself in this situation for an irrelevant person like Lin Yi? I'll say the ugly words first. Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit." Zheng Dongxing was furious. A high-ranking alchemist like him was very prideful. After all, this was the culture on Heaven Island. He wouldn't be used to people not supporting him. Now that Okuda had given him such a cold shoulder, it would be strange if he wasn't angry. If it weren't for the fact that the acting island lord was concerned about Nakajima's image, Okuda would have slapped Zheng Dongxing to death. He was just a 7th-grade alchemist. Did he really think he was someone important? However, at Okuda's level, he had already cultivated his temperament to the point that it was almost impossible for him to be angered in public. He calmly waved his hand and said, "Do whatever you want. Fine. You said it." Zheng Dongxing was so angry that he flicked his sleeves and stormed off. Wu Miao apologized to Okuda awkwardly before she hurriedly chased after Zheng Dongxing and accompanied him to the Executive Island Lord's private room number 2. Chapter 4997. Not only did the letter exaggerate and accuse Tiandan Pavilion of smuggling pills, but also described Lin Yi as a swindler who ruined the Academy's reputation. In the end, it pointed the finger at Okuda Prefecture and accused them of covering up for Lin Yi and destroying the important agreement between East Continent and Middle Island. That was a heinous crime. Now that things had developed to this point, Zheng Dongxing no longer hated Lin Yi the most. He hated Okuda Prefecture for making him lose face. Now, he even wanted to take down the acting island owner who had looked down on him. Will this work? Wu Miao could not help but gulp when she read the letter. You can remove the word will. This time, not only will Lin Yi and Tiandan Pavilion suffer, but even your arrogant acting island owner will suffer. Zheng Dongxing read the letter confidently. In the end, he picked up his pen and added a sentence. He wanted the Academy to hand the letter to Zhuang Yifan. After all, Zheng Dongxing was a 7th-grade pill refiner. His status meant that he had the right to speak. Zheng Dongsheng was considered a top figure in East Continent's yellow-class waters, so he had a say in front of Zhuang Yifan. Of course, whether Zhuang Yifan would take his words seriously was another matter. At the very least, Zheng Dongsheng had a good impression of himself. Okay, let's return to the medicine sect and send the letter through their channels. Although Wu Miao had been terrified for a long time, she was a little excited now. If Zheng Dongsheng's words were true, and Okuda Prefecture was in trouble, wouldn't he be able to dream about becoming the acting island owner? There's no need for that. We'll use the island owner's official channels, said Zheng Dongsheng as he shook his head. I don't think that's a good idea. Okuda Prefecture will definitely be alerted if we use the island owner's official channels. What if he sees it? Wu Miao recalled the embellished accusations in the letter and could not help feeling a little guilty. If Okuda Prefecture saw it, he might fly into a rage and do something bad. I want to see it. If he knows what's good for him, I'll let this matter rest. But if he refuses to do it the hard way, then he can't blame me. Even if he's from a powerful family, I don't believe he will look down on East Continent Academy, said Zheng Dongsheng with a sinister look on his face. All right. Wu Miao hesitated for a moment before she followed Zheng Dongsheng's instructions. However, what surprised the two of them was that Okuda had no intention of asking about this matter at all. Not to mention opening the letter, he didn't even say anything. He just stamped the seal of the Island Lord Pavilion on the letter as usual. Other than that, he didn't care about anything else. Wu Miao's strange expression made Zheng Dongsheng's face turn red. After a long time, he squeezed out through his clenched teeth. Just wait and see. Zheng Dongsheng's face turned red as he looked at Wu Miao's strange expression. Over the next few days, Zheng Dongsheng and Wu Miao wholeheartedly waited for East Continent's reply. After they stopped all activities, Tiandan Pavilion returned to normal. Because of the Level 7 Elixir Lin Yi released, the business was booming day by day, forcing him to borrow 2 more workers from Kai Zhongyang for emergency purposes. Meanwhile, Sydney Pear City had finally begun to recruit people. If this continued, the expansion of the Heavenly Dam Pavilion would be an urgent matter. It would be impossible without enough manpower. Lin Yi had been so busy these past few days that he even had to work as a waiter himself. He had a good taste of the hardships and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. It really wasn't easy for Tianchan and Shueli to survive these 2 years when he dropped the ball from time to time. However, during the busiest period, Island Master Pavilion suddenly sent him an invitation. Acting Island Master Okuda wanted to see him. Of course, Lin Yi could not ignore it. He had already guessed the relationship between Okuda and Okuda Dam. Moreover, Okuda was unfathomable and fair, so Lin Yi wanted to befriend him. After he received the invitation, he informed Tianchan and the others of his arrival before heading to Island Master Pavilion. Lin Yi was about to look for someone to inform Okuda when he raised his head and saw Okuda. He was instantly overwhelmed by the favor. The acting island master had personally come to welcome him. Young hero Lin, it seems like this isn't your first time here, said Okuda with a smile. You guessed correctly, Island Master Okuda. I have been here once before. At that time, Big Brother the Will of Heaven was competing with Southern Aurora for the Deputy Island Master position. 2 years have passed since then, said Lin Yi with mixed emotions. The Will of Heaven is your big brother? Okuda was slightly stunned. At his level, there was no one in Middle Island who could enter his eyes, but the Will of Heaven was an exception. Although this person's realm was not high, his strength and potential that far exceeded his realm should not be underestimated. Even if this kind of person suffered a setback, once he recovered, his future would only be more promising. If he had enough opportunities, it was not impossible for him to stand shoulder to shoulder with a disciple from a super family like Okuda. We are friends despite the difference in age. Lin Yi smiled. Birds of a feather flock together. This saying is true. Young hero Lin and the Will of Heaven are the same kind of people. It's a pity that he went to the East Continent. Otherwise, we could have a good gathering today, Okuda said with some regret. Since Island Master Okuda doesn't mind, there will always be a chance in the future. Lin nodded and pushed the boat along with the current. Well said. However, the will of heaven is not here today, so only the two of us can sit and drink together. How about it? Okuda suggested. Since Island Master Okuda has said so, I dare not disobey. Lin cupped his hands and smiled. The two immediately went to the main hall of the first island. Okuda ordered people to prepare a few exquisite but not luxurious dishes. He then personally brought 2 jars of aged wine and sat down to drink. Lin only took a sip and was immediately surprised. He said in surprise, "This wine is so strong." He had also drunk strong wine in the secular world. In comparison, the spiritual wine on Heaven Level Island was not as strong. However, the wine that Okuda brought out was very strong. It was even stronger than those in the secular world. A good man should drink strong wine. A good man should drink strong liquor. This is a craft that has been passed down in our Okuda family for generations. Not only is the craft unparalleled, even the ingredients used are rare spiritual herbs. The entire family can only produce 20 jars a year. As for this kind of aged liquor, it's even rarer. It's not easy to get 1 jar under the covetous eyes of so many people. If it weren't for young hero Lin, I wouldn't have been willing to take out these 2 jars of spirit liquor, Okuda said, pretending to be distressed. Chapter 4998. Okuda was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "It seems that my third brother is right. Young hero Lin, you really are a wonderful person. I don't have much wine left, so you might not be able to drink it the next time you come." Third brother? Do you mean? Lin, he was a little surprised. He just speculated that Okuda and Okuda came from the same family, but he did not think that the relationship between the two would be so close. Yes, Okuda and I are half-brothers, and the second. He is the third, but he has some problems with the family, so he never mentions the family to others. Okuda nodded and thanked him. Speaking of which, I have to thank young hero Lin. If you didn't remind me, I wouldn't have known that he came to Nakajima. I haven't seen him and his brother for many years. So that's how it is with a master like you and a person like the captain. Your family is really not a small matter. Lin praised. It's not a small matter, just a member of a super family. Okuda smiled. Super family? Lin was stunned. It was the first time he heard of this word. It seemed that the power of Middle Island was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. In Heaven Stage Island, if one did not reach a certain level of strength, it was generally impossible to know the structure of these forces hidden under the water, and Lin was now a master in the early stage of mysterious ascension. His real strength was comparable to the giants in the early stage of mountain opening. It was time for him to understand these things. Otherwise, if he didn't know anything, it might cause a lot of trouble. Okuda intended to make friends with Lin since he mentioned it. He planned to explain it to him. This could be regarded as a favor, and Lin would certainly be grateful to him. However, before he could speak, a sudden sound of footsteps came from outside, and then a guard hurriedly came in and reported, "Deputy Island Master Wu has brought people to see you." Deputy Island Master Wu? What is he doing here? Okuda was a little surprised. Hearing the noise outside, he knew that the guards would not be able to stop them, so he waved his hand and said, "Let them in." After a while, Wu Miao and the others came in, and Lin was stunned to see them. There were many people who came with him, and they were all familiar faces, such as Zheng Dongsheng, Nantian Aurora, and Tong Yangsa. The only one who didn't come was Zheng Dongjue. After all, his relationship with Medicine Sect couldn't be easily exposed, and it would affect his position in the pill hall. Lin was a bit stunned to see these people, and these people were just as stunned to see Lin. They stared at each other for a long while before Okuda Zhou broke the silence. "Vice Island Master Wu, what brings you to the first Island Masters Hall?" "Mr. Okuda, I just received a reply from the East Continent, so I contacted Master Zheng and asked him to come over to take a look," said Wu Miao respectfully. "Is that so? How did East Continent reply?" Okuda looked at them with an ambiguous smile. "We haven't seen it yet. It's more convincing to open the reply in front of Okuda, lest people think that I'm forging a letter. Zheng Dongxing's tone was neutral. He turned to look at Lin Yi and said, "This letter is directly related to the fate of Tiandan Pavilion. It's your fortune to hear it. At least you won't die without knowing the reason." "Oh, then I'm all ears." Lin Yi and Okuda looked at each other. Although he didn't know the whole story, he could roughly guess what was going on. Since Okuda wasn't going to help them deal with Lin Yi, these people actually targeted East Continent instead. They really didn't want to give up. Zheng Dongsheng and the others sneered at the same time. He was still pretending even when he was about to die. This kid really didn't know what was good for him. Although Zheng Dongsheng didn't think that East Continent would really punish Middle Island and embarrass Okuda, no matter what, Lin Yi and Tian'an Pavilion were definitely going to die. There was no doubt about it. Since we're already at this point, let's not waste any more time. "Open it and take a look," Okuda said casually as he continued drinking with Lin Yi. "Okay." Zheng Dongsheng glanced at them proudly and took the reply from East Continent from Wu Miao. There were 2 letters inside. One was from Zhuang Yifan, the president of the Golden Step College Alliance, and the other was from Ling Yuanqing, the dean of Morningstar College. Let me read President Zhuang's reply first. Zheng Dongsheng was very pleased with himself. Zhuang Yifan had actually personally replied to him, which made him feel somewhat flattered. Zhuang Yifan was a real big shot. What was the island master of Middle Island to him? Moreover, Okuda was only the acting island owner in name. Zheng Dongsheng opened the letter in front of everyone. There was only a single line of words on it. Zheng Dongsheng thought to himself that Zhuang Yifan was a big shot after all. His reply was concise and clear. He probably didn't think much of Middle Island. Zheng Dongsheng deliberately cleared his throat before he started reading Zhuang Yifan's reply. President Zhuang said in the letter, "Fuck off." Thinking up to this point, Zheng Dongsheng was the first to be dumbfounded. His originally proud face suddenly turned red. What kind of situation was this? Wu Miao and the others looked at each other. Lin Yi almost burst out laughing. Zhuang Yifan's reply was full of character. "Fuck off? Grandmaster Zheng, can you help explain what President Zhuang means?" Okuda Asha looked at Zheng Dongsheng with a ridiculing expression. Zheng Dongsheng was a little embarrassed. He didn't know why Zhuang Yifan was scolding him. After a long while, he could only explain himself. Looking at the time, the path of the tyrant should have just ended. President Zhuang must be busy with the ranking of the academies. He won't be too happy if we bother him with such a small matter when he's so busy. Plus, President Zhuang has always been humorous and speaks casually, so this is humorous? This is the first time I've heard of it. "I've learned a lot today," said Lin Yi with an ambiguous smile. President Zhuang is very humorous. It seems like Master Zheng has a good relationship with him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used such words, said Okuda in all seriousness. Wu Miao and the others had strange expressions on their faces when they heard their mockery. They looked at each other and didn't know what to say. They had a bad feeling about this. Something didn't seem right. Chapter 4999. However, when he opened the second letter, he saw that it was written by Qing Danzi instead of Ling Yuanqing's handwriting. That's right. Someone shamelessly claimed to be Grandmaster Qing Danzi's master, but his master passed away many years ago. Grandmaster Qing Danzi is obviously the angriest, so it's normal for him to write this letter. Zheng Dongsheng was still trying to justify himself and did not learn from his mistakes. He read it out loud in front of everyone. "Zheng Dongsheng, you dare to fray my master. I will expel you, and from now on, there will be no place for you in the Morningstar Academy." Silence. Hall 1 fell into a strange silence. Zheng Dongsheng was dumbfounded, and so were Wu Miao and the others. Okuda was trying his best to hold back his laughter. As the acting island master, it would be too impolite for him to laugh in front of everyone. Puffed. Lin Yi did not have this scruple. He spat out a mouthful of wine and glanced at the dumbfounded Zheng Dongsheng. He said to Okuda, "Don't tell me this guy is a comedian? Did you hire him to help you drink?" "I didn't pay a single spiritual jade." Okuda smiled. "Free?" So you're an old artist with both skills and morals. I'm impressed. Lin Yi said seriously, full of admiration. Puffed. This time, Okuda finally burst out laughing. He did not expect Lin Yi to be so funny. How did he come up with such a thing? Zheng Dongxing's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He was not in the mood to refute Lin Yi's sarcasm. His mind was filled with Qing Danzi's words. What the hell was that? Lin Yi was actually Qing Danzi's master. If Zheng Dongxing still did not realize that he had kicked an iron plate, he would be stupid. They were both high-level alchemists, but he was only a 7th-grade alchemist, while Lin Yi was Qing Danzi's master. He could not even compare to Lin Yi's disciple. What the hell was he supposed to do? Qing Danzi's words meant that he would never be able to return to the Morning Star Academy. One must know that the chief alchemist had absolute control over the other alchemists in the academy. Since Qing Danzi told him to scram, then Ling Yuanqing would definitely not hesitate. Even if Zheng Dongxing was a 7th-tier alchemist and was welcomed in any Eastern Continent Golden Tier Academy, since Qing Danzi didn't like him, the Morning Star Academy had no other choice. If they went against Qing Danzi's wishes and forcefully protected him, then they would affect each other and no one would be able to concoct pills in peace. Therefore, in any Eastern Continent Academy, the chief alchemist could decide who he wanted to leave with a single word. There was no room for negotiation. The academy could only protect the strongest one. At this moment, Zheng Dongxing was struck by 5 bolts of lightning. Even though there wasn't any tribulation lightning, it was no different from being struck by lightning. Zheng Dongxing wasn't the only one who had suffered heavy losses this time. They weren't any better off. Medicine Sect had failed to get rid of Tiandan Pavilion. If Tiandan Pavilion grew stronger in the future, their business would definitely be greatly affected. Wu Miao had also offended Okuda because of this incident, so she would definitely suffer in the future. As for Nantian Aurora, who was bent on currying favor with Wu Miao, the acting deputy island lord position that Wu Miao had promised him was still a long way off. After all, Wu Miao could barely protect herself. As an executive deputy island lord, it would be extremely difficult for him to push someone else to take over the position. Once Okuda vetoed it, it would be over for him. Everyone left resentfully. Okuda and Lin Yi's drinking mood was not affected at all. The two of them were initially unfamiliar with each other, but after this incident and after drinking a few glasses of wine, they quickly became familiar with each other. Of course, this was mainly because Okuda had the intention to befriend them. After all, he was from a super aristocratic family. With Okuda Dam's reminder, he could clearly see Lin Yi's value. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken out his treasured wine. Although this Zheng Dongxing is a 7th-grade alchemist, his brain is really hopeless. He actually thinks that by using Zhuang Yi Fun, he can suppress the entire Middle Island. He's really a frog in a well. Okuda sneered. Chapter 5000. Could it be that the East Continent's Golden Academy Alliance can't restrain Middle Island? Asked Lin Yi curiously. Although he wasn't as naive as Zheng Dongxing, after his trip to the East Continent, he felt that the East Continent's Golden Academy Alliance should still be able to restrain the other Heaven Islands. After all, as long as they made a fuss about the quota for the Academy's disciples, the other Heaven Islands would have to think twice. Even if there are restrictions, it's not one-sided. It's mutual. Middle Island isn't that weak. Okuda brought this up because he wanted to introduce some secrets to Lin Yi, which were exactly what Lin Yi needed to know. Master Okuda, forgive me for asking, but how strong is Middle Island? Lin Yi couldn't help but ask. What do you think, young hero Lin? Okuda smiled and asked. I used to think that Middle Island was very strong. However, after I broadened my horizons, I realized that not only East Continent and South Continent, but even North Island and West Island are much stronger than Middle Island. Middle Island is actually the weakest, replied Lin Yi honestly. You're not wrong to think that way. Based on the strength that they've shown, Middle Island is indeed the weakest. Even Wu Miao, a deputy island master, has to bow and scrape to a mere 7th grade pillmaster. It would be a joke to say that Middle Island is strong. However, that's just what they've shown, said Okuda as he shook his head. What about their true strength? Asked Lin curiously. Haha, if it comes down to it, apart from the East Continent, it's hard to say which of the 5 Heaven Stage islands is stronger. At the very least, the Central Island is definitely not the weakest, Okuda specifically reminded. Then why is Middle Island's Master Pavilion so weak? I feel like they can't compare to the super big shots of the other Heaven Islands at all. Lenny frowned. That's because the Island Masters and Deputy Island Masters who come out to maintain order are just representatives sent by some old monsters and super families who don't want to meddle in other people's business. The one who can really decide the fate of Middle Island isn't the Island Master Pavilion, but the Middle Island Elder Council, which is above the Island Master Pavilion, Okuda explained. Lin nodded thoughtfully. This kind of thing was not difficult to understand. North Island had an Elders' Assembly, and Middle Island naturally had an Elders' Assembly as well. The difference between the two was that North Island was directly led by a super big shot like Shangwan Tianhua, unlike Middle Island, who retreated behind the scenes to promote an agent. Every member of Middle Island's Elder Council is either from a super family or a super sect. Every one of them has a deep background. These are the true big shots who have the right to speak, Okuda continued. It was true that with his current strength, he could bully everyone in the Island Masters Pavilion except for Okuda. However, if he really went against the Island Masters Pavilion, it would definitely alarm the Middle Island Elders Guild. At that time, even if Okuda didn't take action, those super families and super sects could easily deal with him. That would really be a disaster. The ignorant were fearless. This saying was true. Now that he learned about these existences from Okuda, Lin finally regained his former reverence. Although his current strength was not weak, it was far from the point where he could be fearless. There was still a long way to go in the future. Young hero Lin is too polite. At your level, you will naturally know about these things. Even if I don't say it, others will remind you. It's not worth your thanks. Okuda smiled and waved his hand. Even so, I still have to thank Lord Okuda. It's better to know about these things one day earlier than one day later. Otherwise, there might be accidents. Lenny smiled. In fact, what Okuda said was also true. Even if he didn't know about these things in Middle Island, when he returned to the North Island in the future, Shanghai Tianhua would definitely tell him. He didn't say it before because his level was not high enough. Chapter 5001. After all, the real owner of the island wouldn't be as impartial as Okuda, and he wouldn't go to Okuda-ba for confirmation. If they really fought, even if Lin could win, if the Elder Council of Middle Island were to come out and force the super houses and sect to come out personally, he would definitely be in big trouble. Thinking about it now made him break out in cold sweat. Although Shanghai Tianhua and Ning Shangling would probably come out, Okuda had helped him avoid this disaster in advance. And this was a favor that Lin had to remember. The two continued drinking and chatting, and Lin suddenly remembered that Southern Sky Aurora had appeared together with him. He suddenly remembered something that he had been thinking about for a long time. Okuda, Island Master, do you know of any way to go to the common world? Lin asked with anticipation. The common world? Okuda paused, and only then did he remember that Okuda-ba had said that Lin came from the common world. He thought about it and said, I don't know much about this, but I know that Elixir God Zhang Liju definitely has a way. Although there are other ways, they are definitely in the hands of the super houses. It's a pity that my Okuda clan doesn't know much about this, so the information we have is really limited. I know that, but I want to ask if there are other ways to go to the common world. I remember that Southern Sky Aurora was able to go to the common world as a guide, but I don't know what method he used, Lenny said with anticipation. This idea had been in his mind for a long time. According to what he knew, when Southern Sky Aurora came to the common world, he was only at the original soul level. If he could do it, then there was no reason why he couldn't do it. It was just that his strength was too low, and after reaching the original soul level, he didn't have the chance to come to Middle Island. He only came back now that he was a profound ascendant early stage master. He originally wanted to ask the will of heaven, but since the will of heaven wasn't here, asking Okuda would be the same. Emissary, Okuda was taken aback for a moment, then nodded and said, "Yes, there is indeed such a way to descend to the secular world. This is not a secret in the Island Lord Pavilion. As long as your strength reaches the Yuanying stage, it is even easier for you to do so with your current strength at the early stage of mysterious ascension. However, this method cannot achieve true teleportation and can only temporarily project your soul over." "Yes, I know." Lenny nodded. When he first saw Southern Sky Aurora, he knew at first glance that it was only a primordial spirit. Otherwise, if it was so easy to teleport back and forth, Heaven Island and the secular world wouldn't be so isolated. The key to this method lies in the divine sense. Although it is more difficult for those with a stronger divine sense to project, they can also stay longer. On the other hand, those with a weaker divine sense can only stay for a few days at most. Moreover, the strength of the divine sense is also dependent on the divine sense, so it is inevitable that it will be greatly weakened. Although you are currently Xianshang, the strength you project might not even be comparable to a heaven stage great perfection expert. This depends on the individual, Okuda explained. That doesn't matter. I just want to go back to the secular world to take a look. As for how long I can stay there, it doesn't matter how much strength I can retain. Lin, he couldn't hide the excitement on his face. From the first day on Heaven Island, returning to the secular world had always been the biggest problem in front of him. Although he could only send his primordial spirit back this time, he was already very satisfied. In that case, I can help you. This method is in the hands of the Island Master, and I am the person in charge now. This is a piece of cake. Okuda nodded. Thank you, Island Master Okuda. Lin, he was overjoyed. He originally thought that even if it wasn't as troublesome as real teleportation, it definitely wouldn't be easy. At the very least, he would have to pay a huge price. He didn't expect Okuda to agree so easily. Of course, this was also because he had Okuda's connections. Otherwise, it would be very difficult for him to do this. After all, the Island Master Pavilion wouldn't easily send an outsider's primordial spirit to the secular world. Furthermore, the will of heaven wasn't around. If it weren't for Okuda, he wouldn't even have anyone to talk to, let alone offend Wu Miao, the executive deputy Island Master. I'll tell someone to get ready. It might take a few days. Go back and wait for the news, said Okuda. Okay. Linny nodded. Lin, he was extremely excited after coming out of the Island Master Pavilion. He couldn't calm down even after walking all the way back to Tiandan Pavilion. The first thing he said when he returned to Tiandan Pavilion was, Tian-chan, Sydney, I'm going back to the secular world. What? Tian-chan and Shueli were shocked at the same time. Everyone who came from the mortal world had this kind of obsession, more or less. Even if they did not have it in the beginning, it would slowly develop in the future. However, they might not have as many concerns as Lin Yi, and their obsession was not as strong. You didn't hear me wrong. I said I can go back to the secular world. However, I can only send my primordial spirit over this time. It's not a real teleportation, said Lin Yi excitedly. Primordial spirit projection? The two women didn't know what he meant. It's just like when Aurora Australis went to the secular world. We didn't see him in person. We only saw his primordial spirit projection. Although we can't stay for long, and the primordial spirit's strength will be greatly weakened, we can finally go back after leaving the secular world for so long. Lenny couldn't help but rub his palms together eagerly. That's great. Tian-chan and Sydney were excited at the same time. They couldn't help but ask hopefully, can we go too? According to Okuda Island Master, it's fine as long as you're the nascent soul stage. With my current strength, I can directly raise your strength to the perfected nascent soul stage. It shouldn't be a problem to tell him. Lenny nodded. Since Okuda Island Master wanted to do him a favor, Whether it was one person or three, it wouldn't make much difference. He would definitely agree. Really? The two women were overjoyed. However, they immediately fell into a dilemma. But what about Tian Pavilion? Business is getting better every day. If we don't look after it, how can we be at ease? Now is the crucial time to grow. We can't just abandon it, right? He was also stunned. Previously, he was so excited that he forgot about the situation at Tian Pavilion. Even if Tian-chan and Sydney worked together, they would still be very busy. If even the two of them left, the situation at Tian Pavilion would instantly collapse. Wouldn't everything they did before be in vain? Chapter 5002. Tian-chan and Sydney hesitated for a long time. Finally, they looked at each other and sighed helplessly. Forget it, this time we are not going back with our real bodies. We don't have as many things to worry about in the secular world as you do. Forget it this time, but after you go there, you can go and see the situation of Five Elements Sect and Snow Valley for us. I don't know how they are now. Okay, I'll remember it. Lenny nodded. If it was a real transmission, he would definitely find a way to settle down in Tian Pavilion and bring the two women with him. But this time, the situation was special. It was just a projection of the soul to see the situation, so it was not necessary. Tian-chan and Sydney had just said a few words to Lin when Wei Shinjin and the others below began to complain. The two women hurriedly went down to help, but were stopped by Lin. Let them work hard for a while. I don't know how long I can stay in the secular world in the form of a soul, so I can't take care of here for the time being. So, I still have to improve the strength of the two of you first, so that no one will come to make trouble. Oh! When the two women heard this, their cheeks immediately blushed. The scene of Lin improving their strength last time was still vivid in their minds. Although they had already given their hearts to Lin, the two women still couldn't help but feel shy and embarrassed at the thought of taking off their clothes. Seeing this, Lin immediately laughed. Obviously, he also thought of that scene. It was definitely a pleasing experience. As for Wei Shinjin, although he had taken the heart-devouring insect, his performance in the past 2 years could be regarded as diligent and loyal. Lin had no plans to directly improve his strength for the time being. It was not entirely because he didn't trust him, but mainly because he felt that it was not necessary. Wei Shinjin was now in the early nascent soul stage. Instead of directly increasing his strength through excessive enthusiasm, it was better to give him some auxiliary medicinal pills, such as the Gathering Nascent Soul Golden Pill. In this way, the improvement of his strength would not be too slow, and he would have a better foundation, which would be more beneficial for the future. While Lin was busy making preparations, he was completely unaware that an enemy in the distant East Continent was thinking about him. This person was not Ren Zhongyuan, Yi Xiaodian, Bao Zhuoyang, or Su Kexing. Instead, it was the heretic cultivator who had fought with him before, the mighty figure of the West Mountain Heretic Sect. Last time, from Soaring Cloud City to Morningstar City, the mighty figure of Western Mountain had chased Lin all the way. He had even sacrificed one of his arms to use such a vicious and forbidden technique as a blood sacrifice. In the end, he still wasn't able to take down Lin. Instead, he suffered a great loss of vitality. Since then, he hadn't been able to recover, even after recuperating for so many months. His strength was greatly reduced, and he was in an extremely miserable state. But even so, the mighty figure of Western Mountain still didn't forget to pay attention to Lin Yi's movements. As a result, he found out that Lin Yi had already left Morningstar City. After that, he didn't know where he went. However, today, in the latest list of profound ascending stage masters announced by the East Continent Yellow Stage Academy Alliance, he actually found Lin Yi's name. Profound Sheng? This kid actually became Profound Sheng. The mighty figure of Western Mountain was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. The little vitality that he had recovered in the past few months was suddenly wasted. The last time they fought, he was in the late profound ascending stage, and Lin Yi was only in the late nascent soul stage. Even so, He couldn't take Lin Yi's life, and now Lin Yi was already in the early profound ascending stage. Not only did the strength of the mighty figure of Western Mountain not improve, but because he lost an arm, his strength was greatly reduced. If they fought again, he would no longer be a match for Lin Yi. After all, the mighty figure of Western Mountain was not stupid. Although he wanted to find Lin Yi for revenge, he was not blindly arrogant. At this time, even if he was given a chance to take revenge, he would definitely not dare to find Lin Yi alone. He was only filled with resentment and unwillingness. No, I can't let that kid go like this. The mighty figure of Western Mountain really couldn't swallow this anger, but he didn't have the strength to take revenge. He was so anxious that he paced around the room for a long time. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. Right, I can't deal with this kid, but someone else can. After making up his mind, the mighty figure of Western Mountain didn't care that his vitality had not recovered. He immediately packed up his things, found a flying spirit beast, and went straight to the South Continent Sea. From the East Continent Yellow Steppe Sea to the South Continent Sea, such a long distance, even for a profound ascension late-stage master like him, it was not easy, especially now that his injury had not recovered. But the mighty figure of Western Mountain couldn't care so much because the person he was looking for was now in the South Continent Sea, and this person was the Western Mountain Old Master. The main reason why he promised Yi Xiaotian to kill Lin Yi was because of the Western Mountain Old Master. He wanted to take Lin Yi's head to please him. Now, although he didn't have Lin Yi's head, as an evil cultivator, he really had no other choice, so he could only reluctantly give it a try. The whereabouts of the Western Mountain Old Master was not a secret in the Western Mountain Evil Sect. The mighty figure of Western Mountain quickly found the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. Chapter 5003. The Almighty was not surprised by West Mountain Elder's reaction. After all, he was the second most powerful person in the South Continent branch of West Mountain Evil Sect. There were a lot of people who wanted to be his disciple. They either had great potential or had a special relationship. Otherwise, why would he accept him as a disciple? Unfortunately, the Almighty could not meet either of these two conditions. If he wanted West Mountain Elder to accept him, the only thing he could do was to play the pity card. I know my limits, but I hope that old sect master will consider my loyalty and give me a chance. I will not disappoint you. Shishan Almighty begged. The West Mountain Elder laughed and asked casually, "What's the matter with your arm? Do you know the blood sacrifice technique?" Elder is wise. I did use the blood sacrifice technique a few months ago. You know the person I killed. He is Lin Yi who killed your nephew, Wu Baoyang. West Mountain Elder nodded. Lin Yi? West Mountain Elder's spirit was lifted. In order to track down Lin Yi, he did not hesitate to use the West Mountain Evil Sect's intelligence system. He knew that Lin Yi was Ling Yi and that Lin Yi went to East Continent from West Island some time ago. He did not expect that he had fought with West Mountain Elder. He was immediately surprised and said, "You killed him? This subordinate is incompetent." Although I was able to deal with him, a late-stage nascent soul cultivator, and did not hesitate to use the great blood sacrifice technique, but in the end, it was all for naught. He escaped into Morningstar City, and now, according to the latest list released by the East Continent's Yellow Steppe Academy Alliance, he is already an early-stage nascent soul cultivator, Shishan said in shame. West Mountain Elder was speechless when he heard this. But thinking that even he could not kill Lin Yi back then, he really could not blame West Mountain Elder for this. It could only be said that Lin Yi was really evil. Although his strength was not high, he was not that easy to deal with. Old Sect Master, the hatred between this subordinate and Lin Yi's severed arm is absolutely irreconcilable. But now that I've lost an arm, I'm afraid I'm no match for that brat. I beg Elder to give me a chance on account of my sincerity. In the future, I'll definitely hand over Lin Yi's head with both hands. Shishan Almighty begged. At this point, West Mountain Old Master finally changed his mind. Since there was a common enemy, Lin Yi, he would accept it. In any case, the mighty figure of West Mountain was not too weak, and he also knew the great blood sacrifice technique, so he would be of some use. If that's the case, then you can stay. Although losing an arm is a bit of a hindrance, it's just right for you to practice our sex soul hook hand. Who knows, he might even be able to cultivate faster than someone with both arms. The West Mountain Elder nodded. Thank you, Elder. Hearing this, the mighty figure of West Mountain was overjoyed. He hurriedly kowtowed 3 times. Disciple, West Mountain Almighty, greets Master. This time, he was really overjoyed. In his expectations, it would be good enough if West Mountain Old Master was willing to take him in. Who would have thought that West Mountain Old Master would be willing to teach him the soul hook hand? This was West Mountain Old Master's famous ultimate technique. All right, get up. West Mountain Old Master waved his hand. Yes, the mighty figure of West Mountain stood up happily. Then he asked curiously, Master, when Disciple rode over on a flying spirit beast just now, I felt that the South Continent's seas seemed to be very chaotic. Why has the Spirit Beast clan begun to send experts to these human territories? This has nothing to do with us. It doesn't matter what the Spirit Beast clan does, as long as it doesn't affect us. Don't be a busybody, lest you get yourself into trouble. West Mountain Old Master warned. Disciple understands. West Mountain Almighty nodded hurriedly. Anyway, the only thing he had to do now was to quickly improve his strength and take revenge. Everything else was irrelevant to him. He had no intention of being a busybody. Although this matter has nothing to do with us, since you asked, I'll give you a word of advice. West Mountain Old Master laughed strangely and explained, I've already received news that the Spirit Beast clan is unwilling to be left out this time. This time, the Spirit Beast clan is unwilling to be left out, and they're preparing to incorporate the South Continent's sea into their territory. They're preparing to collect taxes from all the human forces in the South Continent Sea. Now that they've sent so many Spirit Beast experts to the South Continent Sea, it's just the first step in their preparations to collect taxes. But the South Continent's sea has always been the territory of human cultivators. In the past, the Spirit Beast clan has never ruled it, right? Is there no resistance here? West Mountain Almighty asked. In the beginning, there were a few forces who overestimated themselves and wanted to resist, but in front of the Spirit Beast clan, even if all the human forces in the South Continent Sea were united, it would be a piece of cake. Moreover, there was no one who could come forward to unite them. So what could they do? West Mountain Old Master shook his head disdainfully. That's true. Although the South Continent's sea has always been chaotic, there's never been a truly powerful top-notch force. Otherwise, they would have been united long ago. That way, the Spirit Beast clan wouldn't be able to do anything. West Mountain Almighty nodded. This time, the Spirit Beast clan came prepared. They didn't directly send Spirit Beast experts to attack the South Continent Sea. Instead, they only sent these Spirit Beast experts to create momentum. Chapter 5004. There was a mysterious place that was shrouded in mist all year round. Not only was it uninhabited, but even the most accurate satellites couldn't see through it. All they could see was a blurry silhouette, but no one knew what was inside. There had been research teams that had ventured deep into the hinterland of Shenangia dozens of times, using all kinds of cutting-edge equipment, and even sacrificing several precious lives. But to this day, they were unable to truly explore the whole picture. No one knew what kind of secrets were buried in the depths. In other words, this was one of the few unknown places in the world. However, in the depths of this unknown land, there stood a towering mountain gate. The majestic and solemn buildings blended in with the surrounding primeval forest, without the slightest sense of incongruity. It was as if these buildings were the work of nature itself. From afar, they looked like they were made by nature and connected with each other. Inside the mountain was an empty space, and a group of male and female disciples stood there. At the front was a white-bearded old man who was giving them a lecture. From today onwards, The primordial sect's disciple training that occurs once every 1,000 years will officially begin. All disciples of the primordial sect who meet the requirements must head to the mortal world for training. Remember, none of you are allowed to do anything that violates the laws of the mortal world. If you have nothing to do, do not take the initiative to cause trouble. Those who violate this rule will be severely punished. Yes, the disciples replied in unison. For this experiential learning, we will choose outstanding disciples with spirit roots of at least 2 elements to return to the Shenanjia archaic sect. Everyone only has 1 year's time. Once this time passes, the archaic passage will automatically close, and those who can't return will have to wait for another 1,000 years. Do you all understand? The white-bearded elder said seriously. Yes. The disciples replied again. There were men and women, young and old. If Lenny saw this, he'd be very shocked. They were all above Sky Class full mastery. They were all Sky Class masters. Common World, Shueshang District's villa. Counting the days, it had been 3 years since Lenny left. Even Ziyu was a third-year student now. Returning to the villa after class, she saw Wu Chuntian lying on the chair in front of the door, bored out of his mind. Gatekeeper, Master Wu, say, can your life not be so monotonous? I see you lying at the door, playing with your phone every time. You're going to become a gatekeeper, Master Wu, if you keep this up. Ziyu couldn't help but complain. Other than playing with my phone, what else can I do? It's not like you have to go to school, and there's nothing else to do. Shintian continued playing with his phone without looking up. This was the truth. Chapter 5005. I don't know, but I saw a trailer saying that there's a show called Very Pure, Very Flirtatious that's about to start filming. It's similar to this show, so we can look forward to it. Shintian said lazily as he laid on the sofa with his mouth full of chips. Not bad, not bad. Uncle Wu, you're a godly TV show expert now. I'll definitely ask you about these things in the future. Ziyu praised. It's either Grandpa Wu or Uncle Wu. I say, can't you be a little more normal? We're from the same generation. Would it kill you to call him Big Bro Wu? Shintian said helplessly. Ziyu suddenly put down her snacks and sat up straight, looking at him seriously. I will. Shintian didn't know what to say anymore. He could only pinch his nose and accept his fate. Why are you back today? It's the weekend already? The school wasn't far from here, but Ziyu usually stayed in the dorms, only coming back during the weekends and holidays. After all, Lenny wasn't here now, and it was pointless for her to come back every day. Uncle Wu, you're from Mars, right? Don't you know tomorrow's the 11th? Ziyu asked, surprised. Doesn't that mean today's the end of the month? Shintian froze, not bothering to watch TV anymore. He quickly got up and left. I need to go buy groceries. Look after the upstairs for me. Remember to check on me every half an hour. Got it, Steward Wu. Don't worry and go buy groceries. Ziyu waved her hand impatiently. Shintian had become the new generation's Uncle Fu, and everything here was handled by him. Even buying ingredients and cooking were done by him. He even signed up for a cooking class, and now he could cook so well. One could only say that his retirement life was boring to a whole new level. According to tradition, the end of every month was their gathering day. Other than Ziyu, Lingshan, Su Shirhan, Cheng Yi, and Sun Jingyi would all come. Fatty Lai, Kong Xiaobo, Yu Bing, Han Xiaopa, and Zhao Qikuan would all come as well. Although some of them would come every weekend, they were all scattered all over the world, and none of them were like Chun Tian, who retired early to become a full-time butler. They all had their own things to do, and it was impossible for them to get together every weekend. But this time at the end of the month was unshakable. Even if they had something to do, they'd arrange it beforehand or just push it back. This was an important gathering for them. This was Qintian's time to work. With so many people gathered together, just arranging food and drinks was a big job. He'd have to bring back a whole cart every time he went to the market, and people who didn't know him would think that he was a street vendor. He'd gotten used to the fact that new security guards would be interrogated every time. Tian was sweeping up all the goods in the market, haggling over the prices in all sorts of ways, looking like a typical Ani who'd been in the market for decades. The center was the biggest suspect in this case, and if they could confirm it, they could at least make some countermeasures. But if these people didn't come from the center, and they didn't even know where they came from, then it would be troublesome. Chapter 5006. Yes, I know. Tian hung up the phone and mumbled to himself as he looked at the noisy market. Could it be that some hidden power had appeared again? It was almost nightfall, and the villa was filled with people. Other than Lingshan, everyone else was present. Tian remembered what Lingshan had told him to do and reported the news to everyone. Because of this sudden news, the lively atmosphere quieted down. They could still remember the dangerous situation of the Iron Cloak sect and Heluanan's group last time. If it wasn't for Lin Dongfang's sudden appearance, it would have been hard to say what would have happened. Now that a bunch of mysterious masters had appeared out of nowhere, who knew if they were here for them again? I've heard about this as well. The Ice Palace was quite nervous yesterday as well, and we even went to some sects we're familiar with to ask about it, Yu Bing said suddenly. Oh, what's going on then? Everyone asked. There's nothing different from what the Secret Investigation Department told us. The only thing we can confirm is that there are a lot of unfamiliar practitioners walking around, and judging from their strength, they should be ancient existences, but they don't belong to any of the ancient sects we're familiar with. Everyone's guessing that it might be a hidden ancient sect, but we didn't know about it before, Yu Bing said. That's a possibility. After all, the Iron Cloak sect rarely interferes with the outside world, and not many people know about it. If it wasn't for the last conflict, we wouldn't have known that they had this much power. Tian nodded. But if it's a hidden ancient sect, then why are they suddenly moving around? Did something big happen? Chiquan asked, confused. Everyone frowned. Every ancient sect had their own rules, especially those sects that lived in seclusion. Basically, they strictly restricted their disciples from entering and exiting the mortal world. So many unfamiliar cultivators had suddenly appeared this time. It was impossible for there to be no major changes. Let's think of our own ways to find out more information later. No matter what, we need to be more vigilant this time. It's better to be safe than sorry, Tian suggested. Everyone nodded. Lin Yi had asked them to take care of the unconscious women. They could not disappoint Lin Yi's trust. Last time, Tai's sect and Heluanan's sneak attack had already left them with lingering fear. This time, they could not afford any mishaps. If that's the case, we'll have to deal with it in extreme times. I suggest that we go back to being in groups of 2. One more person means one more person. Also, make sure that your phones are on at all times so that we can contact each other immediately no matter what happens, Yu Bing nodded. Yes, I understand. Everyone nodded happily. Now, not only were there unfamiliar cultivators of unknown origins, even Brother Dafeng said that the center was planning something. They had to be on guard. If only Lin Yi was here. Shirhan sighed. Yeah, I wonder how he's doing now. Although he sent a letter 2 years ago, there's no news from him anymore. Chung Yi sighed as well. I've written a few letters already, waiting for the center's delivery. They're all gathering dust now, Sun Jingyi pouted. You're not the only one who wrote letters in secret. We've all accumulated quite a lot. It's too bad that the center's delivery is too unpredictable. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to wait like this. Tian smiled bitterly. Tian smiled bitterly. He was the butler now, and he had to deal with everyone quite a bit. Many of the people here had piles of letters waiting to be delivered to them. If they can send it once, there's no reason they can't send it a second time. It's been so long. Do you think Boss Lin Yi is in trouble? Fatty Lai asked worriedly. What are you talking about? Don't jinx it. Everyone glared at Fatty Lai. Bad things don't happen. Good things do. Fatty Lai quickly slapped his own mouth and comforted himself. With Boss Lin Yi's strength, he could do whatever he wants. He was fine in the letter last time. How could something happen to him? I think there must be something wrong with the center's delivery, or boss would have sent a letter already. Oh, could it be that the letters we wrote last time didn't reach Lin E. Big Bro's hands? Ziyu suddenly said. That. Everyone tensed up as well. They didn't receive a receipt, they just sent it out. They didn't know if it reached Lin Yi's hands or not. They thought that it would reach Lin Yi's hands, but now that they didn't hear from Lin Yi after so long, maybe Lin Yi didn't receive their letters at all. I hope that's not the case. Too bad we can't write letters to Sky Class Island, and the center can't get accurate information either. The only thing we can do now is wait. Chen Tian smiled bitterly. Lin Yi Big Bro only mentioned Tian Chan and Sydney last time. I wonder how the others are doing. Sai, I miss Chen Shi. Ziyu was depressed for once. Chen Shi changed her name to Tian Shi, following Tian Chan and Tian Dai of the Five Elements sect to Sky Class Island. But from what Lin Yi said, she probably got separated from Tian Chan after going up. It had been so long, and they didn't know if she managed to meet up with Lin Yi. Don't worry, the heavens help the good. Lin E. Big Bro will find them for sure. Maybe Lin E. Big Bro will come knocking on your door tomorrow before you wake up. Shintian comforted. Okay. Ziyu nodded and blinked at Shintian. Lonely little demon, I didn't know that you're quite good at comforting people. Lonely little demon? Everyone froze, looking at Shintian with a weird expression. What kind of joke is that? It's nothing. Shintian's face was red as he waved his hands, glaring at Ziyu, who was covering her mouth. What a waste of his good intentions trying to comfort her. This girl was too evil. Everyone was in a mess. They didn't know that Shintian's words of comfort were about to become reality. Ever since Okuda promised to help, Lin, he had been eager to go home. He couldn't even focus on training in the Sky Dan Pavilion, waiting for Okuda's news with all his heart.